All right, let's get started if we can. Good evening and good afternoon and welcome to the 4 p.m. joint work session of December 9th, 2025. Please note all council members are present or coming. I'm sure that Councilmember Blair and Councilmember Myers are coming shortly. With that, let's get started with our tonight's agenda. Got a few things going. I think Rich is going to make a motion to move item 8, I think it is, up to the top of the agenda or right after the recognition of Leon and Judy Jones so that we can so we can eat basically the appointment of the council executive director. So we're going to do that. We're going to move that up so that we can have some time there. Any questions about the upcoming meeting? We've got some capital improvement projects that we've talked about. I think Dave, you asked to have some money set aside for the trails, that which is now in that amendment as well. Okay. The conservation plan. Any issues with that? I look at you, Rich, for any questions about that. We're good on that. We've got 2 rezones, one at Porter Avenue and one at Patterson Street. Although I don't know what will happen, I have a question for you as far as I'm incoming council member Lopez as looking at trying to work within her neighborhood. She doesn't live far from that area, and I think she's trying to do some community engagement. I don't know, but I think maybe giving her an opportunity to weigh in on this. My thought maybe be even to table it. I don't know if that is something that you would think about doing.
Chair, if I can just weigh in on that, I did chat with her on the phone this week about that very item and shared with her the information that we'd gotten from our staff about that. I think that is something that I probably am inclined to do is to go ahead and table it and get the input from anybody interested in that community and to get that council member. Should be a voter by the time it'll come back. So that would be my preference as well.
Agreed.
Yep.
And okay with that? Okay.
The tabling, is it? I can't remember if that's the date certain.
Date and certain, yeah. And I don't know what
date that would be good. Maybe if you have an idea, June.
Maybe January 20th, so that's a few weeks in.
Yeah, since she won't be here in the beginning.
will she be. I think she's
back the 12th, I think.
But will that give her
like
enough
that.
time to continue to do community engagement? I have not
think
talked
so.
to her, so.
I think so, because she's already done some outreach and
Yeah.
She asked people to send in emails or call for tonight's meeting if they couldn't attend. So I think it'll give enough time.
Yeah.
I just think it'd be a nice opportunity for
Yeah.
her, especially as she lives blocks away from it, not even.
Yeah.
January, what date did you say? 20?
20th.
And I'm looking back at Mara, just, I don't know that if you want to, it sounds like that's probably what's going to happen. So I don't know if we really if you need Tim there or not, or Joe to show up. I don't know that either, so.
Well, you still want
Presentation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Joe
Yeah, he's
will,
going.
yeah, still make the presentation, but I don't know. Is Tim planning on being there? He is, okay.
Might be good in case there is
Is there
public
a question?
input that has questions that we wouldn't know
Okay.
how to ask.
I was just trying to
Yeah,
give him
no,
a time off.
yeah,
so
for
much.
sure.
All right, some other water things and preservation elements, pre-disaster mitigation plan. Kristen's coming back to talk to us about the massage parlor regulations. Is there anything that's coming up with that?
Chair, do you want to have any discussion about that in the work session? There was a revised ordinance that was sent to you as an option.
Yep.
That had a little bit of clarification in the process. So we have asked Christian if you all want to present or you want to have a presentation to hear from him before the meeting to get that background. He's available to do that.
I'm looking at,
See about time.
Yeah.
Tonight. If it fits, maybe at
In
the
the-
tail end.
In the work session,
that'd be great.
just at the end.
It's not gonna work if you wait till the end.
Yeah.
We won't have time at the end, you're correct.
If you do it now, you'll have time, and if you put it to the end.
How does that work?
Somehow expands the fit.
A big
Are you
round
prepared?
first.
To talk about it? Okay. Is it short?
Yeah, can we do that in just 2 minutes?
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay,
How short would you like it?
all right, anything else? All right. All right, let's just quickly run over what changes you have, and then that would be great. Lorenzo, hang tight. Where'd you go? Okay. But just, and as an FYI, just real quick, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the airport at the end because we usually seem to have a lot of questions, and so that way we know that we can get through our other things, so.
Okay,
Go.
I will make this very brief. I do have a presentation put together that I plan on sharing in the council meeting. Kind of gives a brief overview of the discussion that we've already had and shows what the proposed ordinance is for, why we need it, a few of the details, but just to kind of give an overall history on the discussion we've already had. For all intents and purposes, right now I'll jump forward through the changes and address the questions and concerns that we had at our last council meeting. The first one was being about any kind of potential HIPAA violations with the client intake sheet. I may have done a poor job of representing that. That that client intake sheet is a blank template sheet that is submitted at the application during the application process. As a sign, as an indicator of something that a professional, legitimate business would do as a licensed healthcare professional. There is no collection of the data on that sheet. That sheet is not collected at any kind of business license inspection or anything like that. The only time that any city officials or employees would have access to that data sheet would be if there was an instance that reached and elevated to the point of law enforcement and an investigation. And at that point, there would need to be a valid warrant signed by a judge to be able to gain access to any of that information. We had our legal team review this and make sure that there were no HIPAA violations involved with this ordinance.
Does that take care of your?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
mine. And yeah, that does.
Draft
If
and
I
convert it.
understand what you're saying, Christian, it's just a template that they're going to submit to the city along with their license application. This is what we're going to use as an intake form.
Yes, sir.
So there's something formal about the reception of a client into the business itself.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian. I appreciate that.
You betcha. I know we're strapped for time, so I will be quick, but as a bit of a side note, as part of my business outreach, I was talking with some of the business owners who actually indicated that client intake sheet is a requirement for their professional liability insurance that they cover or that they carry as a professional massage therapist as well. So a little bit of a side note there. The other question was retaining to property rights and the 3-year moratorium on that business license being available at that property once a suspension or a revocation or denial was implemented on a business. I have reviewed that with our legal team as well, and without the previous ordinance didn't spell out specifically the due process that a property owner would have in this situation. So that's where the change to the ordinance does come is we've spelled out that due process and given the property owners the same rights to a hearing and appeal that the business owner would have. This moratorium period came as a recommendation from DOPL representatives that they've seen other municipalities, not only in Utah, but across the nation, using as a deterrent for illicit activities. Our attorneys have looked over this and been able to do some case study on other municipalities outside of Utah that do a moratorium very similar to what we're proposing here, and it has held up in court. And then the last concern that there was about outreaching to our 7 massage businesses here in town. So we reached out to all 7 of them, first by email, gave it a few days. And as part of that email, we included the proposed ordinance, so they could review it and take a look at it and give us their thoughts. After a few days, we received feedback from 1 business is all. So at that point, I personally reached out and called all 7 of them. And I was able to make contact with 3 of these businesses, 2 of which I had really good conversations with. The third mentioned that they would rather communicate via email. So I resent them the original email with a few questions on there, and they responded back to that email. The response from all 4 businesses that I talked with was very positive. They're very much in favor of what we're proposing. Some mentioned that we're not doing enough and that we should be doing more. Some mentioned that, other cities, they operate businesses in other cities, and other cities are doing it better than we are and doing more than we are. I'm sorry.
Like an echo.
What am I doing in the back of the room?
Absolutely, that'll throw me off.
Kirsten, can I stop you there? I mean,
Please.
did they give you examples of things that they think we should do that this ordinance does not?
Realistic examples or
Yeah, I
far-fetched
think that's
examples?
absolutely, yeah.
For instance, I had one gentleman recommend that we impose a refundable deposit at the time of application to the sum of $80,000 to $100,000. And then after a time period, that money would be refunded if no illegal activities had been reported at the place. So is that realistic or not? I'm not sure, but that was one example.
Might be a deal killer.
That might be, because that does fall in line. It was primarily positive feedback that I received. There was one concern that the council shares, and I share as well, as far as imposing financial burden on a small business owner. And we're not proposing to adjust any of that. We're not trying to make it any more expensive to open this type of business. So that might be a little bit counterproductive to that goal.
Anything else? What we could do, should do.
I think he's just going over what's changed in the ordinance, not necessarily what we could ask him.
Yeah, I
During the
know,
work
but
session, maybe?
where he's got input that might be relevant, I think if other communities are doing things that are proving to be productive and helpful, that these businesses that would like to have the protection of, this is a good time, seems like to me.
So it was kind of interesting because one specific city came up as far as a city doing it better than we are. So what am I going to do? I'm going to call that city and say, hey, what are you doing that I'm not, that I could be doing better? And so I called and I talked to the business license representative over there and I said, hey, do you guys have a specific massage ordinance in place in your city? And their response was no. And I said, okay, well, this is what I'm proposing. This is what I'm kind of working through. And I've done some outreach to some of our businesses here in town. And they said that your city does it better than my city. So what are you doing that I'm not? And so she started kind of spelling out their application process. And it was interesting to me that their application process is what we are proposing in this ordinance as far as the additional information.
Okay. Sounds like we are where we ought to be then.
I think so.
Okay, great.
And realistically, that's the only change to this ordinance is going to be that due process for our property owners. So there is language change in the revised edition.
Chair, we've sent some motion language to substitute the revised. So if you're good with that, you can go ahead and use that. If you have any questions, you can let me know.
Awesome, thanks. Any
I
other
really
questions?
appreciate you
Yeah.
doing that extra outreach. Thank you.
No, you betcha. You betcha.
Thank you. All right, now Lorenzo.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for having me. My name is Lorenzo, for anyone who doesn't know me. I am the Ogden Sustainability Coordinator, and I'm here to talk about the Utah Renewable Communities Program, as it's now known. It's gone through a bunch of name changes, so you might have known it as the Community Renewable Energy Program, or ACT, or CREA, or HB 411, or anything like that. It's all the same thing, but it's Utah Renewable Communities now. I think it rolls off the tongue a little bit better. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And the reason that I wanted to come now versus a little bit later on, maybe next year, is because I want to make sure that we get the basics of this program down so that when the time comes to make a decision as to whether or not to adopt this program, we've got all the basics down, right? We don't have to spend more time talking about, oh, what is this program and, how does it work? And so that's what this is for. We're going to go high level, and then any questions you have, we can dive a little bit deeper, and then we can kind of go from there. So what is the Utah Renewable Communities Program? Essentially, what it is, it's a coalition of 19 Utah communities of various different types that are pursuing net 100% renewable energy by 2030. So how do we do that? Basically, what you do is we all band together, we pool funds to fill the gap between what renewables Rocky Mountain Power already has, and then we fill that gap to 100%. So we're projecting there'll be about 50% renewables by 2030, give or take. So we would add another 50% that matches the load of all of these communities together in renewable energy, essentially. We've been working on this for, let's see, we're 2025,
Entire
6
life.
years now. It's been a long time, right? Been a long time, and we're really getting to the finish line here. So how would it work? As I kind of mentioned before, Rocky Mountain Power has its grid, it has its own energy mix. That's natural gas, it's coal, it's some solar, it's some wind, it's a bunch of things, right? So what we would do is essentially pool funds, build out new renewable energy, most likely wind and solar, that would connect to Rocky Mountain Power's grid, and then it serves, homes and businesses. So we'd still be on Rocky Mountain Power's grid, and we'd have all the reliability that we currently have. Let's see, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned, so we'll remain Rocky Mountain Power customers. And so we're not going to be at the whims of, the wind and the sun, basically. So, and this is also not, for example, rooftop solar here in Ogden. It's not going to be something where we do this program and all of a sudden every rooftop in Ogden has to have solar, and we have, wind turbines down 25th Street. It's not that, this is probably rural Utah, solar and wind out in areas like that. So how have we been involved? And this group will know this pretty well. Back in 2019, the council adopted a resolution to pursue net 100% renewable energy by 2030. So some of the people on the council now were on the council back then, some weren't, but that resolution was adopted. And that was in large part due to just a lot of resident requests to explore this program, to give us a chance to potentially adopt it. We thought it was going to be sooner back then, but here we are in 2025 and we're still in it. So 2021, we signed the governance agreement, which was again another step we had to take. 2024, the council voted to essentially authorize the mayor to sign what was known as the utility agreement, which again allowed us to continue in the program. And our last step is coming soon, And that's going to be called the participation ordinance. Essentially, it'll be an ordinance that council will adopt or not. And if we do adopt it, then we will officially be in the program. So we're anticipating that will be in the spring of this coming year. I should say this coming year, yeah. So we're not thinking years down the road now. Okay, so why? Why do we do this? Like, why are we talking about the program? I think it's a really good question. I think the main thing is choice, right? So this program is, if we adopt it, gives our residents a choice that they don't have right now. If we don't adopt it, they can't choose to have net 100% renewable energy through this program. If we do adopt it, they'll have that choice as to whether or not they want to be a part of it. And then I think also it allows Ogden to take control of its own energy future and its own timeline, right? So theoretically, someday Rocky Mountain Power on its own might get to net 100% renewable energy. And I hope they do, right? But we don't know when that is, right? So this is a program that gives Ogden the choice to say, nope, we want it by 2030, and this is how we're going to do it. And these are the resources that we're going to, put out there in the real world to make that happen. Scale, I think, is really important for this program, as I think we all understand the economies of scale. So when you pool together a lot of resources, and in this case, a lot of customers, you can work in the economies of scale. It makes it cheaper for everybody, right? So again, we could do this alone in some way, but doing it in this program makes it a lot easier administratively, and then a lot cheaper on a per customer basis. And then these, I think, are a little bit more regional benefits. This is going to bring jobs and stuff and investment into probably rural Utah. Could potentially be a little bit of Wyoming, but the selection criteria for energy resources is pretty heavily weighted for a location to be in Utah. So that'll be investment into rural communities. And then health. Again, regional benefits here. As we clean up our energy supply, that has regional impacts on air quality, which then translates to human health impacts, right? So this is the combined usage is about 25%. So these 19 communities represent about 25% of Rocky Mountain Power's total Utah sales. So we'd be taking that whole 25% and then making that renewable energy. So that's big regional impacts there. And then another thing, I put this big here because from what I've seen, and I wasn't here back then, but what I've been told and what I've looked at, there was a lot of resident feedback when this program became available. And I think that's why we're still here today. At every decision point, there's been residents that have said, please, let's stay in this. Let's keep staying in the program development. We want this option. So let's just do what we have to do to be in this program. So I think that's why we're still here today. And I think that's, something that we'll continue to see as we get the final details, and whether that changes or not, right? How the residents really feel once we have all those final details, I think will be really interesting. So what's this anticipated to look like for customers, Ogden residents? Really, it's going to look like literally a little line on your bill. Okay, so you get your Rocky Mountain Power bill. I get mine electronically, a little PDF. It'll just be another one of those little lines on your bill that says something to the effect of, Utah Renewable Communities, and then it'll have the amount on there. So that's what it will actually look like. As far as the program itself, what it will do is, let's say that Ogden City adopts this program, and we'll talk about timelines later. The customers in Ogden and all these participating communities, bless you, will be opted into the program, and then they can opt out if they don't want to be a part of it. And then if they stay in, then after a certain amount of time, that's when they'll start to see the little line on their bill. The board, the URC board, which again, previously, Councilmember Chaburka was our board member and also the vice chair of the board. Now Councilmember Graff has filled in that spot. So thanks to Councilmember Graff for that. He's drinking from a fire hose right now, learning a lot of new information, but I commend him for the time he spent.
Yeah, and I'm just going to take the opportunity. This is 4 meetings a month. And I want to thank Angela for investing the amount of time that you did every single month for years in what it meant to be on that board. I really appreciate it. It's a big deal and a big opportunity. And there is a lot of technical stuff involved in it all.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for your service, Dave. And then I just have to thank Lorenzo because he's been attending on my behalf the last few months because I've been busy in my new role at work. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you both. yeah, there's the board meeting every month that all the communities have their board members, and then there's some subcommittees as well, of which Ogden's a part of a few of them. So those are the meetings that Dave's been attending, and it's just been great to have him there. Anyways, so where was I? Okay, the board took the position that they would like it to be no more than $3 to $4 a month on the average customer's bill. That is not necessarily what it will be. That's the board's position, and we're waiting to see what that will be. Okay. You may have heard a $2 to $7 range. I think that's still kind of where they're looking as it could be, but the target is that 3 to 4. Okay, for the average customer. Let's see. Then I think we also would want to talk about our low income residents. That's a really big deal, right? I think we're all a little bit concerned about that. And I think the board has done some really, really good work to figure out how to protect those customers, those residents. So a couple of the things for our low income customers on the bill, they will see if they are part of Rocky Mountain Power's Schedule 3 HELP program, that's Home Electric Lifeline program, they will get automatically, without any additional paperwork, an additional bill credit for this program that is designed in an amount to offset that average cost for like an average customer. So for example, if they want to stay in the program, but they're on that bill assistance program, they'll just automatically get that credit. No extra work, which I think is really, really good.
And that's
Also-
a credit up to $7.
A credit up to $7, that's correct. And so also in this program, you're gonna have a while to opt out. We've proposed, obviously before the program starts, you can opt out. You'll have 60 days basically to opt out before the program starts. That's 2 months. And then after the program starts, you'll have an additional, what the board has proposed to be 6 months of time where you can opt out without any sort of a termination fee. So you'll have essentially 8 months where you can opt out of the program without any sort of a termination fee. After that time, for regular customers, they're saying it'll be something small like $30 of a termination fee one time to get out of the program. For low-income customers, no fee ever. You can get out of the program for free, no matter what, whenever you want. So I think that's a really, really big deal as well. So as these measures have come into play in the program application, I have felt better and better about what we're doing to protect those who don't make quite enough or quite as much money as some others in our community.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the folks that are part of the program but aren't paying their share of the program because of their low income thing, how is that deferred? Who is paying it that, you know?
That's a great question. There is there's a very small additional fee on the bill for those who are not low income that will fund those members who are low income. It's like a certain amount of cents each month, basically. So it's funded by non-low income customers.
And also there's federal money that flows through the Department of Workforce Services. It's called LIHEAP, and they make a application there. And if their application is approved for low income assistance, then they become part of the HELP program at Rocky Mountain Power. And actually the federal government has revenues that will offset part of this cost as well.
Yeah,
If
low
I-
income, that's correct. Low income customers could potentially stack 3 bill credits as part of this. So you could have the HEAT program, which is another bill assistance program, the HELP program, which is through Rocky Mountain Power, and the Utah Renewable Communities bill credit that's funded by the non-low income customers as part of the program. So
Can I just do another quick clarification too, that I'm sure you'll also state, but just to reiterate that in the ordinance for this program, it's not allowed that anyone that's opted out of the program or any of the costs to be distributed to them. So this would only be distributed to the people that are in the program.
that is correct.
No
Even if-
one, everybody that opts out will have no responsibility for the costs of administration or anything on this program. And that's really
Yep.
well defined in the program application. So
that's correct.
just to make sure it's clear that it's not costing other people that opt out any money.
That's correct. If you live in Ogden and you opt out of the program, nothing will show up on your bill. You'll be done. You don't have to pay any of those costs. That's correct. Yeah. So only for participating customers, and that goes for every community that's in this program. Good questions. Okay, program development process. We'll kind of breeze through this. We'll just kind of put it all up here. It's been a long road, right? So 2019 to now, you'll see those green numbers there, or those green circles. That's what we've already done, and these blue circles, that's what is left to be done. So as we speak, the Public Service Commission is evaluating the program, and they will have a public hearing on December 16th to basically get public comment and have witness hearings and all this different stuff. It's going to be a pretty long day. And then it's customary that they'll rule on a program that they have the hearing for within 30 days. Because it straddles the holidays there and it's a new type of program, it might take them a little bit longer, but we're looking at potentially the end of January for them to say, we approve this program in this form and this cost, and you know, all those details we've been waiting years to know. Yeah. So that's where we are right now. That's why I kind of wanted to come now and just get us on the program basics, make sure we're all on the same page. And also to give us a resource that we can maybe go back and listen to if we have any questions, or then you can reach out to me if any other questions now, so that when that clock starts ticking after the program approval, that 90-day clock, we won't have to waste a lot of time on the basics, right? We can just really dive into the details.
Let's ask some follow-up questions about the 16th, because I know there's a lot of community members that are interested. On my calendar now, it's basically presentations from like 9 in the morning till 6 p.m. And then 6 p.m. is when the public comment period is open. So it's kind of a long process. I don't know if there's a better agenda that will be available. Do you know, Lorenzo?
Yeah, and I think I have some details about it in a
Okay,
later slide,
perfect.
so we'll see it. But essentially, there is a virtual option, so people don't have to travel all the way down to Salt Lake. It's a Google Meet, and they can join that and give their comments that way, and they can just join in at 6 p.m. so they don't have to wait all day, which I think is good. Did you have something?
Yeah, early on, the state's Office of Consumer Protection was involved in some of the discussions. And I wonder if they've weighed in lately. Have they provided testimony to the Public Service Commission, or?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I will follow up on that. Good question. I did want to mention too on this timeline, so it kind of ends, within that 90 days after the Public Service Commission approves the program. So I just want to emphasize that after that 90 days, that's not when the program is going to start. We're still going to have a lot of time. So basically what they're anticipating will happen, Rocky Mountain Power, once this program is approved and the different communities have signed on, they're going to take about 5 months to do a billing system upgrade. Okay. So we're going to have that amount of time, plus that noticing period that I mentioned before, those 60 days where we will be sending out notices through Rocky Mountain Power to every single customer in Ogden, right, that has a Rocky Mountain Power account. So that each customer will get 2 notices within those 60 days. So they'll have about 7 months from the time that we approve, or not, but if we approve the program, till the time it actually starts going. And in that time, it'll be up to the city to do as much outreach as we want to do to inform our residents that, this program's coming, right? So we'll have a lot of time to be able to communicate this to our residents prior to it actually happening. Thought I saw a question. Okay.
I do, but boy, I think we're running out of time. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm almost done here. So, I'm going to skip over this, but this is kind of what's going on right now. 2 things: the program applications being reviewed by the Public Service Commission, and then at the same time, the agency of which Ogden is a member is running an RFP to identify actual renewable energy projects that can be implemented as part of this program. So we've got six projects right now that are in the pipeline, still confidential, can't share what they are, but that could be implemented as part of this program. Okay, I mentioned the 16th. That's the public hearing for the Public Service Commission. January, that's when they might rule on the programs we're anticipating. Spring is when the council would have to probably rule as to whether or not we want to adopt the program. And then late 2026, as I kind of alluded to, is when the program would actually launch and start showing up on customer bills.
So quick question. So they don't have to wait until the facility's built? They're just doing an RFP right now. Facilities are going to need to be built after that, right?
That's correct. So the way that this works is essentially we pool resources. We start pooling the funding to build those resources to get paid for, basically. So we show them, hey, we have a financial mechanism. We're collecting revenues. We can prove that we can pay for this, and then they build it. Yeah, and so it's the emphasis there is it's net 100% by 2030, not starting 2026, right? So it's by 2030, we will have built out enough renewable energy to say we are net 100% renewable energy, and we can all say that we are. And we can, as a city, say we are net 100% renewable energy. Any businesses that stay in the program can say we are net 100% renewable energy, or we're a sustainable business. You know, any customers, we can all say that by 2030. Just a couple of things, and this is the slide that I was mentioning. This has some details about the public hearing. So if you want to go in person, the address is there. It's in Salt Lake. I would recommend probably not going till 6 p.m. The early part of the day is going to be quite dense, and I don't know, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you want to, you can go. And then you can also submit comments, written comments using the information at the bottom of the slide there. And then if you want to give a actual public comment during the hearing, there's the virtual instructions there. Is a Google Meet link, and you'll be able to do it that way by doing that raise hand feature. And that goes for anybody who wants to do that can. Yeah, and then this is just more information. If you want to learn more, there's a website, utahrenewablecommunities.org. There's a newsletter you can sign up for with that QR code, and then they've got all their social media and things of that nature. So you can spread that information as you wish to get people informed about the program. And that is all I had. So any other questions?
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to make one clarifying remark because someone was looking into this today because they saw it on the agenda and wanted to know more. And if you go to the Rocky Mountain site now, there is a way to sign up for something called like Blue Sky Renewable or something. And that's different than this program because this one's not in place yet. That one is also an opportunity if people want to sign up for things, but sometimes there's limited capacity, etc. So it's kind of confusing because it kind of looks like maybe it's this program.
Yeah,
but it's separate.
Yeah, Blue Sky is different, and you don't really know where your money's going with Blue Sky. You kind of just pay into the void. Yeah, cool program still, but it's not as concrete as what this program would be.
All right. Well, that's 6 years condensed into 20 minutes. Excellent.
Doing my best.
I'm glad that we're finally moving forward. I'm bummed that I'm not going to be here to vote for it. So I'll vote for it from afar.
Yeah, well, thank you for all of your time. Those of you who've been here and doing this for 6 years now. So
thanks, Lorenzo. All right, we're moving the airport leasing policies to the end of the agenda. So next on the agenda is Justin Sorensen. Oh, also, can we get that presentation? I don't see Lorenzo's presentation. Oh, this is his. Okay, it was just more of
the email also.
Good afternoon, Council. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to come and present to you a proposed ordinance change to our BDO lease revenue ordinance. So I have a few slides I just wanted to go through and talk through some of what's being proposed with the amendment change. So just a little bit of history about the BDO lease or DDOU lease revenue ordinance. Early on when this was originally adopted back in the early 2000s, the revenue that we would receive from this, I don't imagine they would have envisioned it to grow in what it is to today. So with those uncertainties, the original intent of this was to assist with some capital needs, and so when you look at the city at the time in the early 2000s and up into 2007, we wanted to look at some just comparatively where Ogden City was. So as the tax base in the early in 2007, our property tax revenue was just shy of $10 million. This year, it's almost $22 million for the general fund, and sales tax has grown from $14 million in 2007 up to almost $27 million. So quite a substantial change there. And also, as you know, our fund balance has changed quite a bit since 2007, 2008 as well. And up to that point in time, the city had faced a lot of decades of deferred maintenance. And so the BDO funds were an opportunity to help assist with a lot of that deferred maintenance. And so up to that point, there was not the ability to invest in a lot of assets. We could operate but not invest in assets because there wasn't that fund balance, there wasn't that excess. And so at the time, the council reserved 50% of these funds to be able to use for capital investment. Why that's been important and what's happened over the last 20 years or so is it's helped us, enabled us to progress on longstanding capital needs. There's been a lot of investment that's happened to be able to do improvements to various things throughout the city, whether that be parks or buildings or road projects, all types of infrastructure projects, all types of different types of capital projects. These funds have also supported redevelopment by filling in funding gaps over the years. It's also helped to catalyze private investment in the downtown and neighborhoods through like the Quality Neighborhoods program. That's been a huge investment, which has been renewed a couple of times and has been helpful. And then the other thing that we have used these funds for is for one-time operational needs. An example of that is funding the general plan update. We put funds aside using BDO lease revenue to support both to pay for a contractor and to pay for a couple of temporary full-time employees. And so it's just some examples of what we've used BDO lease revenue for over the years. And then where we sit today, and I have a graph here I'll show of the growth of the revenue. But we currently are at over 15 million annually in BDO lease revenue. And so when you look back at the policy from 2003, it really doesn't match the scale of what these funds are now. And so although the BDO is used to support major capital and redevelopment, the debts, which a lot of those are capital, and as well as, well, and some of the other things, sorry, I worked on this presentation and trying to gather some of my thoughts but something I just wanted to bring up that's important is today when you talk about like the general fund and the support the general fund has, there's certain traditional levers that we have as a city that we can do to fund the general fund. Those traditional levers you could imagine would be like our property tax rates. That's something that the city council has an impact over. User fees and those rates, those are something that city council has an impact on, and administration, and then as well as expenditure and service levels. And so those are the things that we've traditionally been able to control whether or not how we can budget for and so when we look at this and as we move forward, some of those things do create significant community impacts, as you know, property tax increases. If you continue to do those at a high rate, it's a burden on citizens, or, user fees. If we, large jumps in user fees can be a significant impact. And also if you cut services, that can be an impact to citizens as well. So there's a balance there that we have to achieve that can be very difficult. And so those are some of the things that we're faced with today. I know, as you know, Mayor Nadolski's vision is truly to try and drive efficiencies with administration, and which, along with that, to further our internal and external collaborations, and by doing that, trying to be more effective with what we're doing. And so those things are taken into consideration as we talk about these changes in this ordinance. Another thing, to just as a reminder, the City Council, we added a grant writer position in fiscal year 25. It's our second grant writer position. And this position has been focusing on trying to find funds for projects. So we have one that's been helping in public safety that's helped a lot with operational. And then the one that we added in fiscal year 25 has gone out and tried to find funds that could help with various capital projects. And she's doing a great job going out. There's a lot of things that they're working on right now. And I know that that information has been provided by the Public Services Department. And then again, I mentioned this, that, an increased property tax burden makes tax increases challenging to the community. So the proposal in the ordinance today, this is the history. This is going back the last 12 years, last 13 years. So you can see fiscal year 2013, we were under 4 million in BDO lease revenue. And last year, that revenue grew to 15.5 million. And as of right now, we anticipate, in working with Boyer, that revenue will continue to grow. There's still opportunities there, and so that is, and I've been here since 2015, and so just looking in the 10 years I've been here, we've tripled the amount of revenue from 5 million to 15 million. So it's amazing to see that growth and what it's been able to allow the city to do. It's an extra funding source that, you know, a lot of cities may not have have. And so it's been a great thing for Ogden City.
Justin, what happened in FY 2020?
With the dip.
Mhm.
So that would have been during COVID. I'd have to look more in depth to know if there was if there were, I see a hand with Lisa.
So it could happen again.
Good question. So the change in the ordinance that's being proposed today is, the first one is to add a provision that would allow add flexibility for general fund support. So additionally, it's basically adding an additional lever. So when it comes to budgeting the general fund, and the way that we've written it in the ordinance is, and as we've discussed in prior meetings, that when we do our budgeting process, we're considering what unused wages we have. And historically, the last 5 years, we've averaged around $2 million. And so that's where we've looked at when it comes to our budgeting and how much we would have. And so, but the goal is, over time, as you know, as a council, you've done a lot of great things in implementing different salary tables and different things that have really helped. And so the goal is that we wouldn't necessarily have as many openings. We're able to keep our staffing levels higher. And so whether or not that 2 million average is sustainable, it may go down. It's really could fluctuate from year to year. And so the way that the verbiage is written is that we would first look at that when it comes to balancing the general fund, when we're doing wages and looking at the needs of the general fund. And then if there's any additional delta that's there, that a potential supplemental transfer from BDO lease revenue would be proposed as part of the annual budget process. So it's not intended that this would be an ongoing amount, but it would be looked at every year and what that need may be. And so there would still be council approval needed, and it would be part of that annual budget process.
Can I ask you what you mean by entitlements? Not intended for ongoing operations, or entitlements?
I'll be honest, I can't remember why I put that in there. I might remove that from that slide. Sorry.
I also have a question,
Yeah.
Justin. You know, the graph that you had prior that showed have you got the graph or an overlay we could put on that shows all of the ongoing encumbrances we've placed upon BDO lease revenue over that same time frame?
I don't have a graph of that, but I can definitely add it for when this is presented in council meeting. I think that's good.
That's gonna help me. I mean, I've always kind of looked at this BDO lease revenue as the golden goose that's really made Ogden, really saved our bacon in a lot of ways. And the idea that we continue to place ongoing encumbrances on it is kind of killing the golden goose. It's sort of like, I got a raise at work and I'm gonna go immediately go out and spend, get a big old debt that's gonna suck that up. And so it really doesn't help you. And that's where that's my thought process when I think about BDO lease revenue.
Yeah, I'd be happy to put that. I do have a chart, and it's in the packet, that shows the number side, but visually, I think that would be, I will make sure that I add that for the presentation and council meeting.
So, Chair, if I may, Justin, with regard to another graph, I'd be interested to see how many square feet have been added to the BDO in the last 10 years, and then lay revenue growth over that. And then how many square feet can still be developed? And what has lease and revenue, what have lease rates and revenue look like over that same amount of time? So, and I kind of came up with that looking at this 31-year projection on the spreadsheet. So if we're at 15,500,000 in lease revenue currently in 2027, or projected, and in 2058, it's projected to be 18,091. That's a $3 million increase is all. If that $15 million is in my retirement fund, I'm firing my personal finance investor. That's 0.5% per year.
Mhm.
That's terrible. And I don't know, I'm open to understanding why that is so low. Why is this projection flattening out the way it is after years of very substantial growth from 2.5 or 3.5 million to
Right.
15?
So historically, administration's always, we've been very conservative with what those numbers are. And so that's the number that we've done is that 0.5%. It definitely could be looked at. But there is, there is still potential for additional growth. What that is, if it's going to continue to jump what it has jumped, I mean, that's a large jump that we've seen over the last decade.
Yeah, and that's why I'm asking for what kind of developable
Right.
space do we still have out there? Do we have the potential to continue to grow in that area?
Yeah, I will make some notes on that and see what information we can pull for you. I do know one of the things. So one of the things that the way that Boyer is operating with those buildings is, as they have to take out debt to build the building, we may not see any cash flow from the building till the debt's paid off on their specific buildings, and so there may be some other structures that have been built that do have tenants that we haven't recognized anything yet on those as well. So there's still, so I know that's part of this, and then there's and then as far as any undeveloped areas that still need to be developed. So yeah, we can see what information we can provide. Oh, yeah.
Chair, I have a question as well. Justin, as we're talking about overlays or graphs or other ideas, I think it would be helpful to see, what has the lease revenue been used for, and maybe some dollar numbers affixed to that. So how much has been put into quality neighborhoods? How much has been used to catch up on deferred maintenance? And what is that deferred maintenance? Is it, what are the roads that have been improved, or buildings, or other things, so that we can see where that money has gone? Because we know it's happened, and it's certainly been a huge blessing to the city. And then just another thought, it might be interesting to see how the certified tax rate has done over that same time period, to see how, were it not for the BDO lease revenues, and you mentioned the levers of how the city could raise funds, what would have had to have happened with those certified tax rates to keep up with what we've been able to do.
If we didn't have these extra funds, how much additional revenue would be needed?
Then Chair, I've got a question too, please. The second bullet down, supplemental transfer from the DDOU may be proposed during the annual budget process. To me, that sounds like the proposal that the administration made for this current year budget. And our council was not particularly fond of that idea. Is that what that one sentence is saying?
So it is different from what was talked about a year and a half ago or so. What was talked about there was a set percent that would happen every year. What this is saying is that if there is a transfer needed, if there's a delta in our budget for the general fund needed to help cover wages, that we would propose whatever to cover that amount. So it could be $500,000, it could be $1 million. It depends on what that would be, depending on what unused wages were not available to help with that budget process. So it's not a set percent, and so there may not be anything. It just depends from year to year. As we go through the budget process, as administration meets and looks at what our revenues are going to be, what we're projecting, and what increases are needed for wages and benefits, and we go through that balancing process, we would look at what is needed to cover that delta if there is any needed. So it's not a set amount. It leaves it open to that ability to where it's not a requirement that we would propose it every year.
I think you've answered my second question, but let me just ask the second question anyway. My second question is once we do approve some type of a proposed funding to go to the general fund, does that obligate that we use that same amount the following year?
So that's where we would look at this on a year-by-year case. So as we go through the process so every year when we do our budgeting process, we always start at a beginning point. We take the prior year adopted, and that's our beginning point. We'll go through and run a projection on wages and what's going to be proposed with wages, any other adjustments to the general fund. we'll project what revenues we anticipate for sales tax, fees, new growth with property taxes. And as we take all that information, and now with looking at prior year unused wages, we'll take that and consider that of how much can be used to apply to the budget for the new year. And then as we go through that process, then we would decide, okay, is there a need to cover any difference? And so it's a year by year case. It wouldn't be if we did $500,000 this year, that means it's automatic $500,000 next year. Every year we'll review this. And that's kind of what the language is allowing administration to do, that it would still be a proposed item in the budget process each year. And it wouldn't be well, we did $1 million last year. That means it's going to be $1 million every year now.
And I just have one last follow-up comment. And that would be that I have a little heartburn with that because to me, the BDO budget has always been used to improve and upgrade infrastructure or new developments and things like that. And so to start to push that over into the general fund to cover payroll or other obligations, and payroll is the huge portion of our budget. And so to start to put money into that the administration can use for those things does exactly what Councilman Rich Heyer mentioned, that starts to take away from the golden goose of what this has traditionally been. Is that something that we've used to make our community better and to promote and improve infrastructure and other things? So that second bullet point gives me a little heartburn. Just to be candid and outright, that you're gonna have to educate us a little better on that because it's pretty vague to me.
I'm pretty sure if you asked all of us, it gives us heartburn.
Okay.
So good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, good job.
before you go on, first of all, thank you for all of this. So one of the things we've used the BDO or BDO lease revenue for is for CIPs and improvements throughout the city. And since we're asking for new graphs, I would be curious to know
I might have to
what
list
our
member
CIP expenditures or what our proposed CIP or wish list or want list or need list looked like in 2007 and what it looks like now and where it projects will be, because I assume just like this has tripled since 2007, I assume our needs, I mean, we're not caught up
Right.
by any means. We still have needs and ongoing needs, and we're going to continue to have ongoing needs that just continue to get more and more expensive. So I assume those are going to continue to be more expensive. So in addition to other heartburn, I have heartburn over that. I have heartburn to think that we're going to be able to we have some extra money so we can use it here when I don't think we really do have extra money, because I think we have opportunities other places to spend that money like we traditionally have. Number two, in the packet, or maybe it was last time we talked about this, I believe we called it a shortfall, right? If there was a possible shortfall, a gap, a delta. To me, I have heartburn over that because I applaud the administration for using the unspent wage dollars and trying to use that first and do that. But in my opinion, it seems much easier to budget, knowing that if there's a shortfall, we're okay, and there's a backfill. We have money to do that for, and because of that, I have heartburn to think about you all using this on a year-to-year basis. I think if there's continual shortfalls or deltas, I think that's a bigger issue than simply budgeting less and then taking money from somewhere else. To me, that's a whole different issue and a different mindset and something else that needs to be addressed. I would like, I don't know, in my mind, I would love to see some type of like more of a criteria, like you can't do it 2 years in a row, or you can't do it so many. Like, I just think if you're doing it constantly, it's
And you should just have taken the percentage in the first place.
potato, right? Like you're taking money. It's all gathering money somewhere. It's just you're not technically doing a tax increase to get it. That's the difference. So those are my two. I have heartburn. Oh, and then my third is help me understand how this grows the general fund, because if there's a shortfall or if there's a delta, we're still taking everything that we have, right? If we're, again, just simple numbers, if we have 3 million and we need 3.5 million, we just take the 500,000, right? Well, we're still gonna take the 3 million we have out of the general fund to do that. So it doesn't grow the general fund, in my mind. I could be simply missing something, but it's not growing. We're just using what we have and then taking money somewhere else. So those are my heartburns.
Yeah, I'll make some notes
Thanks.
and see if we can get
Mhm.
some more information on how to best explain some of those.
Okay,
I,
thank you.
I think
And then I just had an inquiry. It seemed like when I first came onto council, there was there was work underway to identify efficiencies in the positions that we employ people throughout the entire city. Where are we with that work?
I know it's something that's being reviewed and looked at. I'd have to defer to either Lisa or Mara on. I know that's something that we're talking about and it's being looked at from the administration side.
Yeah.
And looking at positions and efficiencies and I think that's a focus of the mayor that we are, that we have the right number of people in the right places. And so that is, and I know that is something the mayor's office is discussing and looking at.
Yeah, I would be hopeful that we're gonna find some efficiency and some savings in that study as well. Because I'm not at all inclined to adopt this ordinance. And, are you gonna speak to the update on the debt service
Yeah.
stuff too?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
thank
will.
you.
Can I just ask on that? Because I agree, Ogden might not be growing at the rate other cities are growing, but Ogden will continue to grow. And I think the last studies we've had, and correct me, Janine, please, we technically are, I don't want to say understaffed, but we have less staff per resident than other cities around us, right? So I think it's going to be I think it's lofty to think we can find and figure out ways to maximize what we have, but we're definitely always, the city's always going to be, I think, needing to increase positions. It might not be 10 or 15 or 20 a year, but we're always going to have to increase a couple, I would assume. That's what's generally been the case
I think
in the
that,
past.
yeah, I think that, I could definitely see that with like public safety and different, hands-on kinds of roles, but in every industry that I know of right now, there's no more hiring of people because there's technology that people can start to learn. And I'm not saying that I'm a fan of all of that productivity talk, but I think that it's, thinking about workloads and how people spend their time. If there is a piece of technology that could help take some things off their plate, then they can think at a higher level, be more strategic and not be burnt out just doing tasky type things. So I think there's definitely a balance there. And I agree with everything that's already been said about the change.
So can since we're talking about heartburns, when are we going to start the parking? I mean, we've been talking about this up to $4 million annually. It just almost gives us the right to never do anything about parking. And it doesn't seem like that we're following through. That's the first thing. My second thing is I am going to preach this one more meeting after this. 5-year financial plan. I'm going to say it over and over and over again. If we don't have a plan, we're going to just keep failing. We're going to keep having this conversation. We're going to try to figure out how to rob Peter to pay Paul. And so until we figure out that sales tax might go down, BDO lease revenue might have an issue, we are going to maybe not have as many permits coming, our fees may have to go up. We are not going to ever get ahead. And so until we have a better plan, then year after year after year, I'll ask, so you guys are in budgeting talks right now. What do you think the deficit or the delta is right now as far as us having to fund the gap for employee raises or for employees right now?
For this upcoming year, or to be honest, haven't even started looking at, but we used 2 million this last year out of prior year funds to budget that difference.
And I guess that's what I mean. Like, we should be able to do that with a click of a button, and we're just not there. We should be able to know that faster than this. And It just is so frustrating. But I don't have to worry about it in one more week.
You still get 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. With your new T-shirt. Do you miss me yet?
I can tell you as far as the financial plan, that is, we're still discussing, looking at that. It's something that we're getting close to providing to the mayor to be able to be reviewed. And so I do agree it is important to have. And then as far as the parking revenue, the parking
I've
goes,
been talking about it for 8 years.
as far as parking revenues go, administration is getting ready to transmit a packet on that, which will talk about the timeline and the fees and everything that way. So
I feel like I've been talking about that for 8 years too.
so the other changes to the ordinance, is there any other questions right now? So the other changes is really under the debt section of the ordinance. So currently there was $1 million that was proposed, up to $1 million for the CBD area related to that debt service. Originally that was going to be removed after fiscal year 27, but we have enough funds in that area that we're proposing to remove that now, so we won't need to use any additional funds in fiscal year 27 to finish paying off the debt in that area. We still would have the Marshall White debt payment, and then the ordinance does add language for the Continental RDA debt, which is for the Wonder Block, and then adding a backstop for the MBA debt. So it's up to 4.2 million and up to 4 million for those two. So the 4.2 million on the Continental, that would go down once we start to receive tax increment in the area. So that would reduce that amount. And then on the MBA, once the parking is implemented and those revenues are coming in, that will reduce the amount needed there as well. So, but this adds that as a backstop ability when we're budgeting.
Justin, were there any discussion about, instead of naming every project that there could be funding for from BDO lease revenue, is just going to some more general language that says this money can be used for bonded debt service, contractual debt service, so that every time we bring a project on, you don't have to go back and amend the ordinance. I just wondered if there'd been any discussion about that.
Not that I've been in any, but that is I'll make a note of that. That's something good to consider for the next time we need to, if we need to make it.
Help me with my fear around that we don't just end up with one big lump and we don't know what's in there.
But I think they would still have to show you what it is in
But
their
this would
use of
just be
BDO lease
the
revenue.
Ordinance.
Right.
Yeah.
Just BDO lease revenue, which they provide you every year as part of the budget. Here's what we're using the money for. And they tell you every year what that money's going for.
Okay, so we don't just have one big black hole that's swallowing $10 million.
Right.
Okay.
They'll provide that detailed information annually.
I don't see the downside in naming these things either, though.
Mm.
So it just seems to be more clear.
And then the other item that's being proposed is to renew the quality neighborhoods for an additional 5 years at the $1 million. So this would be the third go around of renewing those funds.
That doesn't give me hope at all. So well done.
Okay.
And Chair, can I ask on that one? So this is the third go round, and we know that, costs have gone up and everything. So we're still staying at the $1 million. Was there a discussion of possibly increasing that to meet some of the challenges that we're facing that way? Not that we're always, we're talking about not necessarily throwing more money at problems potentially, but I'm just curious about, indexing that somehow. Was that a discussion?
I know the mayor's office and community development, they are looking at the uses of those funds and they are discussing that. But at this point, the proposal was to just renew it for the same amount for the additional 5 years. So they are looking at the program and what they, because you're right, the funds don't go as far as they did 10 years ago. So
While we're putting in this $1 million annually, it does compound in other agencies, and I mean, because we do it, other people do it too. And I think over the last 10 years, I think Janine kind of figured it out. Tell me if I'm wrong, but kind of figured that there was probably $45 million added to the neighborhood because of R10. So that's kind of a big boost on, doing this. Maybe the emphasis is how do we compound it more?
right.
Or is it, I was gonna maybe ask the opposite, is it time that the city doesn't need to be in that?
Well, maybe so. You might be right.
or other neighborhoods.
And that's what kind of gives me heartburn. This is now 15 years. That's a lot of money. And because when it was originally proposed, it was 5. And wasn't a big surprise that it renewed for another 5, but it's kind of starting to get a little hard to do.
And also we've changed ordinances so other developers have more opportunity to do other types of development. Because I think, I mean, to me, that's one of the challenges. We had different rules for ourselves than what other developers could do, so.
Yeah, I think
That's
also
what the
that money doesn't just disappear either. It gets back into the program through program income. So it's, I mean, it's building up. So maybe that's another question is what's that fund look like, so to speak, you know, in all those different areas. I know we've had those presentations, but might
Doesn't
be
mean that the
helpful for
city
this one.
can still be partners with people doing the work, but do we have to be the ones?
Questions? In the rest of the ordinance, these are all the unchanged items, but I thought I'd just leave them on there as a reminder of what currently is in ordinance. So the Union Station land purchase, this would go through fiscal year 30. And then we also have the funding for public art projects and maintenance, arts grants up to 150,000 annually, but we have been able to incorporate that into our general fund balance. So we haven't had to use BDO funds for the last several years for the grants portion of our arts. And then also for a minimum of 100,000 annually for emergency or critical project repairs. And then whatever our balance is, once we've gone through and put in, once we've taken the revenue and we've gone through all these different items, we look at what's left, and what's left, at least half of that has to be appropriated for capital. And over the years, a lot of those years, more than 50% of what's left has gone towards capital. So, and then also we can use these funds for to support a community plan project, and then also early retirement of city debt and any others as appropriate. So that language remains the same in the ordinance.
Can I just ask, and I know it's only $150,000, but why, what's the, I think I know the answer, but what's the reasoning with just using the $150,000 out of general fund rather than actually taking it from where we said we would take it from?
Are you talking about for the arts grants?
Yeah.
So I believe, I don't remember what year it was, but when we were going through the budgeting process, when we were looking at the uses of BDO and then balancing the general fund, administration made the decision to go ahead and include as part of our balancing without requiring that 150 to come from BDO to balance our budget with that 150,000 included already. So it would be ongoing in the general fund already budgeted for, which then has freed up that extra 150,000 to be used for other items out of BDO. So, but the ordinance still says if we need to fund it. So if there is an issue, then we can use BDO lease revenue for it, for the arts grants.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's a lot of charts and graphs that y'all want overlaid onto something. I think we're gonna have to come back and have a bigger discussion or there has to be a bigger discussion later.
Yeah, and we
Jenny,
can,
do you have a suggestion on?
there can probably be some staff to staff discussions before that comes back.
I'm not sure we're ready to give the thumbs up yet. Well, at least
Yeah, we're not,
the 4 members that are going to,
Thank you.
if I vote, yeah,
yeah.
thanks for the hot seat.
I know you got a lot.
I know this isn't a graph, but this is a chart with all the numbers. And this just shows the projected revenue versus what those commitments would look like and what a balance would be available to be able to use for projects or other items. So, but this is in the packet. It's really small here, but yeah, I will definitely, we'll have some conversations with council staff and see what other information we can put together for you. But is there any other questions at this time regarding the ordinance, the amendments?
I'd sure like to see the jail on that list right there. As an FYI, that we're purchasing.
Oh, the purchase? Yeah.
We've already, that's already been appropriated. Council
We know.
appropriated that.
I'd like to see it
I'd
on.
like to see it spent
Yeah.
Oh,
on the appropriation.
All right. Thank you.
yes, thank you.
All right, Glenn, let's talk quick, not quick, but Glenn, talk about the management service or study consultant agreement.
There are 2 microphones right here. This is
It's time for dinner.
have to. next year I'll be talking a whole lot more, so you might be eating a lot more.
They're gonna all put on weight.
There you go. Just, they'll come up on Tuesday nights. Okay. Ready to go? Okay, well, I'll try to be fast. This is to cover the Public Services Management Study consultant recommendation. So we would like to do a management study for the Public Services Department for the general fund operations. We've gone through a process, and this will provide some of the background for that and how we came to the conclusion that we are recommending who we are. So just very quickly as background, because you as a council of the full legislative branch, you do have oversight authority. How that works under state and city code is that usually takes the form of a management study or a staffing study or an operation study or something like that. The auditor contract also falls under this. So the auditor contract that you approved earlier this year is that same kind of authority. We have done these management studies a lot more frequently in the past, particularly in the 90s and the early 2000s. Over the last few years, they've dropped off a little bit. Part of that was COVID. Part of that was we had some pretty major projects going on in the city that really took a lot of time. And so we haven't done one of these the last few years. And so we'd like to get back into the swing of things. So the scope of this particular study, as I mentioned, would just be the general fund portion of the Public Services Department. That is a very big and very complicated department. And so the utilities and the Gulf operations really should be studies of their own, just because they're so big and so complex. And so we just wanted to focus on the general fund portion of that. There might be a review of some of the higher level management structures within the department, because it is the same upper management that does manage the whole department. So it may cross over a little bit as far as upper management, but the operations of those enterprise funds would not be included in the scope. And kind of the quick summary of what we're hoping to get out of it, as it says here, is to analyze the efficiency and the effectiveness of the policies, procedures, management, and operations. And some of the ways that that can come out is looking at management and organizational structure, as I mentioned, staffing level recommendations, efficiency with day-to-day operations, reviewing the department's mission and objectives, looking at facilities, equipment, and technology needs. And then one that we did add was the second to last one, and that was recommendations to help with strategic plan development. So all of the departments are working on strategic plans. That's something that this administration is doing. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to help them out with that and have consultants provide some recommendations for that. So just a quick look at the department itself. As I mentioned, it's a very big and complex department. They've got 5 general fund divisions. So there's the top 5: administration, engineering, parks, cemetery, recreation, and streets. And then the enterprise fund divisions, which are the 4 utilities, golf courses, and then a smaller recreation enterprise fund. This is their budget for this current fiscal year we're in FY26, and it's just under $103 million that they manage in their department alone. So very big. When we look at staffing for the department, they do have 183 authorized full-time employees, but they also manage 70 part-time employees and around 200 seasonal employees. So they manage a lot of personnel as well. One of the interesting things about this department is that because some of the employees work within different divisions, they're charged out to different divisions. And so that's where you get these fractions that are on the right side. And that typically is with the engineers mostly, but with utilities, a little bit with the airport, and with utility billing with the treasurer. So there's some split there. So there is about just under 193 authorized full-time employees or full-time equivalents with those adjustments. So they manage a lot of people as well. So just a quick overview of the process we went through. So in mid-September, we published the RFP. That was published in the Standard Examiner a couple of different times. And then you can see there, this was sent to over 2,500 what they call disadvantaged business enterprises. So this is a federal database that our purchasing division has access to. They put in the parameters of the RFP, and they build a database and a listserv from that database. And with the parameters of this RFP, there were over 2,500 businesses that matched that. And so this RFP was sent to all of those businesses. If you recall the auditor contract that we did earlier this year, that DBE list was about 70. So this is significantly more. Just because of the parameters, this is also nationwide. That was focused more around Utah. And then we did target some firms that we know do this kind of work. So we did send a specific invitation to about 10 different firms around the country. Some we worked with before, some we just knew that they did this kind of work, so that as many people as possible would know that this RFP has been published. In October, we did a pre-proposal meeting, and this was just to allow these firms who are interested to ask questions, get a little overview of what we're asking for, what we're looking at. We had 6 firms join us for that. And then on about a week later, the submittal period closed. And then toward the end of October, the selection committee, which did consist of us as council staff, Councilmember Ritchie, Justin Anderson, the Public Services Executive Director, and Lisa Stout, Management Services Executive Director, as the committee. We met as a committee and reviewed and scored the proposals. And then on November 12th, that same committee interviewed the top 2 firms. And then we checked some references and made sure the committee was okay with it. And then with that, they forwarded their recommendation on to you. I'll touch on that just a little bit more in a minute. So a little bit on the scoring. So we had a number of pass-fail elements. You know, did they have resumes? Did they have evidence of insurability? Just some kind of yes or no. Did they have these things in their proposal? And then we had the scoring matrix that we included also. And this is pretty standard with some of these RFPs. So you can see those top 2, the methodology, the resources, and the capability and experience. Those were 30 points possible. And then the schedule and the fee proposal, those were each 20 points possible to give a maximum of 100 points possible. So we scored all 3 that submitted based on this matrix. And as I mentioned, the committee that we had, they forwarded a unanimous recommendation to award the contract to Matrix Consulting Group. And some of the reasons for that was they did score the highest of the 3 firms. Their references were very positive, and we felt that they had the most direct and practical experience with the public works issues. And so we felt like that and their team that they put together, they had a lot of great experience with public works, engineering, parks and rec, fleet management, communications. So we felt like that was really what we needed to get to this management study. So their cost was among the best. It was just over $81,000. And their timing we also felt was appropriate. We haven't done one of these for a while, but we do have a sense of kind of how long a consultant might need to take to really get the information they need and put the report together. So we felt that 4 to 6 month timeline was probably the most appropriate. And we have actually worked with Matrix in the past. So in 2016, we did a fleet and facility study, and we were very happy with the results there. So how would we use it? Kind of like the general plan, it is advisory, so this isn't binding at all. But there will be recommendations in there. If there are recommendations to change operations within the department, a lot of those things can just be implemented by the mayor and administrative staff. They would not need to come back to you. If there are changes or recommended changes to staffing levels, to budgets, to capital projects, or even the department structure itself. This department used to be 2 different departments that were merged a number of years ago. Those would come to the council for approval, so you would typically see those with the budgeting process. And if you recall Chief Matthew talking about the fire management study that was done, I think in 2007 or 8 or something, he implemented that over a very long period of time. So every year with the budget, he would come and say, here's another one of those recommendations that was in that study that we're implementing this year. So we would expect maybe not too many of them this year just because of the timing for the upcoming FY27 budget. But I think you will see a lot of those recommendations be incorporated over the next few years. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. We do have Jen Winter, who is a VP with Matrix online if you have any questions for her. Otherwise, we will have this on your agenda next week for consideration for the approval of the contract.
Any questions?
Nope.
Great job.
Yeah,
Thank you,
no,
thank you.
great job. And
Appreciate the process.
do we always take the low bid, or they just were
Not necessarily.
low ended?
Yeah, there were 2 that were fairly close and 1 that was not close to that at all. So just the combination of all of them was the best fit, we thought.
So in your scoring matrix, does the least expensive proposal gain 20 points? Is that how that works?
No, we just if it's the most appropriate, if we feel like what they're charging and what they're doing is going to cover the actual work. Like I said, one of the proposals was substantially different and their work plan was very different from the other two as well, and maybe they didn't match up that well.
Okay,
So it's not necessarily that they get the full 20 if it's lower. It's just a ranking of if we feel like what they're charging matches the work that we're going to get for that.
is there room for adjustment to their budget or their contract number as
Not
they dig into this?
Not, if there are changes, then we would have to approve those and review those. But typically, this is what they're proposing. This is the amount they're proposing.
And
They
then they'll
need to meet the
deliver.
work that they're proposing to do with that amount of money.
Okay,
Right, and any additions would be provided, right? If they're,
Yes.
and they talked about that in their
Yeah.
proposal.
Okay, any other questions? It'll be on the, for
next week?
Next week, yep.
Will you want to presentation on it next week, or there is a resolution you have to adopt? Can we put that on a consent agenda?
I'm comfortable with consent.
I don't think,
I'm okay with consent.
Thanks.
doesn't seem like there's many questions. All right, next on our agenda, and thank you for waiting, is the airport leasing policies. I'm not sure who, Jared?
All right. Thanks, Chair White. Appreciate that. And knowing that we are pretty short and limited on time, I'd like to get Ryan up here as quick as possible. Hopefully, what we're going through and doing is answering all the questions that you guys have given us and some of the feedback that we've received. One of the things before I do turn it over to Ryan real quick that I did want to touch on was one of the questions that came through was there was kind of a feeling or maybe that we were trying to hurry and push it, that there was like an urgency that we wanted to get through. I wanted to touch on that in the sense that I want you to please understand that there's no means on or no reason on our end that we're trying to push you into quickly hurry and do something that you don't feel comfortable with or that you haven't had all of your questions answered. The only urgency that is behind it, if you're feeling that, was just our own internal goal of trying to get this done in time for the new year. And the reason for that being is that the leases out at the airport right now run on a calendar cycle. And so they expire at the end of December. They start over, on January. And right now we have 74 leases that are in holdover status, ranging all the way back to the year 2020. We have 16 more that will come into play in 2026 that will expire at the end of 25 and come on to that holdover status. And so that's why if you're feeling any urgency, I apologize. It's not to try to hurry and push you doing anything. It's just we're trying to hold ourselves accountable. We're trying to push to get our airport running the way it should and get it being managed in a professional manner, and then also being able to get questions and answers back to some of these tenants and these leases that are going on. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ryan to go through his information. And the presentation that he has tonight is the same one that you saw last week that you should have now, and we'll continue to answer those questions that you had. So thank you.
All right, thank you for having me back, Council. I'm glad to be able to make it tonight. I apologize, we had to do an online presentation last week, and I know we kind of rushed the slides. I dumped a lot of information on you. So we do have the same slide deck as last week. We also have Margaret Martin, the city's external counsel with Aviation Online. We have a number of city staff here, including Brian here as well from the airport. And we have a number of tenants and stakeholders that are part of the airport advisory group in attendance as well. So we've got a lot of resources here to be able to answer questions. In the interest of time, rather than, I do have the same slide deck. I don't want to just go through and hit you with the same slides. And so I'd really maybe start opening up by questions, hear from council what it is that your concerns are, particularly around the ordinance that was proposed. I believe that was included in the December 2nd work session packet on what the proposed ordinance changes are. And that's really the goal for tonight, is to help try and address any concerns that council may have with that. And if time permits, I can go back and hit on some of the slides that we covered last time and answer any questions related to that. But really the intent was to try and keep it high level, not get into the details of the proposed policy, but really just address any concerns that council has.
I'm sure there's a lot. So You wanna go? You wanna start?
Yeah, I think so. I'm getting in the Wayback Machine a little bit. you
Yeah.
know, Trying to say, okay, what is our new leasing policy? How's it gonna address some of the things that have been consternations in the past? Okay. Now, last week, I believe, you were very clear that, FAA doesn't figure that a lease that goes on forever is really a lease.
Yep.
I totally agree, and I think that does harm to the taxpayer who is funding the airport. If we don't take advantage of these revisionary things at some point, that's the thing I think you're talking about. What is that point?
Yep.
Okay, so I did have a chat with Brian a little bit this week, trying to just ask some hypotheticals, because I don't know anybody in particular that's got a lease, but we talked about the 20-year plus the 10 plus the 10.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody has any grief about that. But we've got people at the airport that have got hangars that are 70 years old. And it's long time that those things reverted, but we're still not somehow. What is the proposed policy that's going to deal with some of these, especially those that are in an RDA already?
Yeah.
I in my mind, it seems clear that once you've defined an RDA, nothing gets renewed ever unless you got some magic way to do it, to accomplish a goal of that RDA. But they don't just keep going on and keep that RDA in limbo forever. So I guess that's my question is how are we, where is the line in the sand with this new leasing policy? Where is it?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I'll jump into that and then we can just take questions as they come up. So maybe I'll jump into a couple I'll answer that in a roundabout way and try and go into as much detail as I can on that. So first thing, when it comes to the ordinance that exists today, there really is no true leasing policy in ordinance. What exists in ordinance is actually under the commercial aeronautical section. So there is a leasing policy that applies to commercial leases. And I think that's where some of the confusion is. Well, what leasing policies are then for non-commercial aeronautical leases? And that's really what we're trying to address through this leasing policy. So what is being proposed to be taken out of Title VIII is really that part that was addressing commercial leases. When it comes to reversion, I think kind of the key principles to remember are these grant assurances that I've got up here, right? So without going through each one of these, what the FAA is looking for is that the sponsor, being the city in this case, has responsibility and retains the power to be able to manage the airport as it sees fit, and also in compliance with other grant assurances. That's making sure that the airport is safe to operate for users, that it's accessible to users. And I think that's a big one when it comes to leasing policy, is making sure that we don't have perpetual leases, so that people do have access to the airport, that they've got the ability to come in, either purchase a hangar from an existing tenant, or be able to lease bare ground where they can develop a new hangar, or rent a facility from the city that already exists. Also, we don't want to enable exclusive rights to any users of the airport, right? So that you do have a lease, but that's not giving you ownership over the ground or extending any rights that are intended to be provided by the city, and that the fees that are charged are fair and consistent to all users, and also that the revenue generated from those fees then stays within a closed financial system for the airport. So I'll bring this up just to kind of cover where we are in this process, as I'd say. We already hit on minimum standards. That was the goal that we accomplished a couple months back. Rules and regulations are in place in the ordinance, and that's something that we will come to later on. But again, rules and regulations, for the most part, do make sense in being codified in ordinance. Rates and charges is something that we were tasked with as part of our scope. We've completed that, but we'll bring that to council through the regular fee schedule adjustment process in the spring. So really, when you look at the bottom of this, that's where we're at, both leasing policy, template lease, and then there's this design and development standards. The document that we're working on for the city and administrative policy really incorporates all of that. And I'll try and go into the difference between the lease template and the leasing policy. That's kind of hard to identify what belongs where. So you create a template lease, but we don't want to to duplicate that then in policy and have one change where they end up conflicting with each other. Also, the design and development standards are intended to be a standalone document, but since there isn't anything that exists right now, we put a draft into the leasing policy so that you have something to start with that can then be pulled out later and expanded on it in its own standalone document. So the leasing policy itself is the way that the airport shows the FAA that's complying with those grant assurances that they've agreed to as part of accepting the federal funds that we've talked about for the capital improvement projects. The RFP that we just saw is a great example of a procurement process that's very common when it comes to leasing property at the airport, particularly where you have a competitive process. So if there's a lease that's expiring or there's bare ground that somebody's expressed an interest in by submitting an unsolicited statement of interest, for example, we want to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity to be able to bid on that property, one, so that it's the highest and best use for the airport, that the airport's getting as much revenue as they can for that parcel, and that it's appropriate for what the airport is looking to do. And so the process that we've kind of outlined in the leasing policy is that you accept these unsolicited statements of interest, and what you do is you publicly notice those. So you put it out there for 30 days that there's been an unsolicited statement of interest expressing, requesting a lease for airport property. And then if anybody else is interested in that property, they could then submit another statement of interest. And if the airport does get competing interest in a parcel, you'd go through that competitive RFP process then. The airport can also say, hey, we have this parcel that we'd like to essentially do like a request for qualifications or request for interest to see if there is interest in developing that without receiving any statement of interest first. So you can just go right into the RFP process for certain parcels of property. So I bring all of that up because I want to jump ahead here to the reversion question, right? So reversion is an important clause within a lease, right? And it's really not much more than that. It's a pretty simple clause that's typically found in aeronautical leases that help the airport maintain control over the airport property. So it goes back to a number of those different grant assurances by preserving rights and powers of the airport and really the sponsor be able to control what development's being done at the airport. It's also enabling access to the airport, that you're not effectively transferring the land through a long-term lease and preventing other people from being able to access the airport by having the right to either bid on or develop or build their own improvements on the land there. So as I mentioned, reversion is an important clause that we talked a lot about that last time. I don't want to go and spend a ton of time on that this time around. But reversion is not necessarily the end-all be-all policy for airports. Some airports do take that position where, at the end of a lease, once the lease expires, reversion is the policy that they want to pursue. We've gotten direction from the city as well as from the stakeholders that's not really what we want to see at Ogden. And so I put up this quote up here last time, that reversion is, well, it's still good to have that clause in the lease. It's not the only path forward when a lease expires. And airports and sponsors really should seek something that's more akin to a win-win situation where the city can get some kind of exchange for a lease renewal. So when it comes to I guess to answer your question directly now, the FAA's policy is that, the FAA's position is that a lease that's longer than 50 years is effectively transferring the ownership of that property. So it's a disposal of property of the airport, even if it's not actually transferring ownership of that parcel, you're effectively transferring or disposing of that property for anything over 50 years. So getting back to the reversion issue, the things that we've proposed in leasing policy from the consultant's policy that we've drafted are these three different options. The city really wanted to see something that was going to be that could be established for setting a precedent for other airports around the country to use. These are a number of different scenarios that we've seen where at the expiration of lease that the tenant and the stakeholders can come together with the airport, find common ground for extending that lease for a new term, so a new lease, where the city is still winning and getting something in exchange for that as well. Did that answer the question though?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just say yes for now.
Okay.
Okay.
What other questions can I answer?
I might be getting this all wrong. I'm going to take a stab. So in an earlier slide, you talked about if you get an unsolicited interest in a piece of property, you're going to notice that so that if there's competition out there, you draw it in.
Mhm.
Okay, and you're going to get the best deal for the airport in through a competitive process. Does that not stand in opposition to what I'm understanding your reversion policy to be, where you're good with not exercising reversion? Why wouldn't you at the end of a lease say this property is reverting and we're going to open it up to competition?
So when you say open it up to competition, are you talking about the airport taking that facility back and then leasing it as a facility itself?
I don't have any idea, but if let's say it's you've got a blank piece of ground and you've got 5 people that are interested in developing that piece of ground, and you've got another piece of ground that somebody has developed and they reach the end of their lease term, but you're going to consider extending it and not, I'm going to use the wrong words here, but not enact the reversionary process to take that property back to the city.
Yeah.
So why not at that point? If you're competitive on one end of the spectrum, why are you not asking for competition when a lease is at its end?
Yeah, so just to restate the questions, I think I understand, right? So we're looking at bare ground for development versus a lease that's run its course, you're at the end of the term, and you've got the right to exercise extension, or sorry, the right to exercise reversion, so that if in the bare ground scenario, we're going out there for competitive bid, why would we not do the same thing when it comes back to the end of the lease?
Yeah, because you could wipe a structure off of that bare ground and throw it out there for competition.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that is the idea. And part of what we've discussed is you can do a similar process for both. And I think we'd like to keep the policy as simple so that you're treating both bare ground and facilities the same, so that you are looking for that competition. Now, tenants would like to see the opportunity to at least have a right of first refusal so that they can match any bids that would come in on a parcel, right? So that is a way of putting it out essentially to bid and allowing competition for highest and best use of that facility. So that is an option that you could incorporate into the leasing policy.
But am I correct in understanding that under the proposed policy, somebody reaches the end of their first 20 years and they negotiate with the airport a new lease rate for a 10-year extension, and we're good, there's no competition?
So the way that the policy is proposed, and again, we're still kind of working through the details of the policy, but this 20 plus 2 10s would be that you've got a 20-year initial term with 2 standard 10-year extensions. And as long as the tenant is in good standing and has not been in default through the term of the lease, that both parties would mutually agree for a 10-year extension. So what we're really talking about is kind of a 40-year lease term, 20-year term initially and 2 10-year extensions as part of that. And as long as the tenant's in good standing and not having been in default, then those 2 10-year extensions would go into effect. At each point, you would have a market rate adjustment. So the lease term would then adjust up to whatever the current fee is in the consolidated fee schedule at that point.
Okay. So in that first 20 years, it's 3%, 3%, 3%. At 20 years, we're going to go 10 more. We're going to update the lease rate to whatever the market is carrying at the moment. And then again, for 10 years, it's 3%, 3%, 3%.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And the reason for the 3%, I know we talked about that last time, tenants would really like to see some consistency and predictability in the lease so that they know what their payments are, at least for the first 20 years. And then once that adjustment hits, they know what the schedule is going to be for the next 10 years. So it helps for planning purposes and consistency in knowing what your payments are going to be and not having to adjust it based on CPI. Ultimately, the city is catching back to where it should be, regardless, because of those market rate adjustments every 10 years after that initial term expires.
Have a question, please. for me, what I don't understand is how that applies to current hangar people who lease.
Yep.
So because they've got lease agreements with the city and they go back and are grandfathered into a real weird way that I've not ever looked into, but I've heard a lot about from friends. Help me understand how this applies to those tenants.
Yeah, so what we'd like to do is treat all of the leases essentially the same at lease expiration. So there's a lot of terms of renewal, extension, right of first refusal. Those terms can get really confusing. So the idea is that at the end of the lease expiration, if the tenant wants a new lease, then you've got the airport has these options of finding a middle ground essentially to get to keep that tenant in the facility that they may have built or had purchased prior to that lease expiration, but giving them more term into that facility. Rather than reverting it, there's these different options to be able to extend the leases, or what I should say is get the tenant into a new lease for a longer term period. But there's some investment that's going either back into the structure or back to the airport for that consideration. So the options really that I presented last time, what we typically see are investment for term. Often you'll see airports that have kind of a matrix of if you put in $1 million, you're going to get 10 years, $2 million, 20 years. That doesn't provide a lot of flexibility, and it doesn't consider necessarily the condition of the hangar. Oftentimes you're making investment when there's no investment that's needed. So it's just a matter of putting money in order to be able to get X return. What we proposed is using a facility condition assessment to be able to look at what the condition of the hangar is. So it doesn't matter whether the investment was made throughout the term of the lease or at the end of the lease. We're really looking at what condition is the hangar in at the end of that term. And then based on that, identifying what improvements are needed in order to be able to extend the term, or in lieu of putting the money into the hangar itself, being able to pay a deferral fee that's either paid up front or amortized over the term of the lease. So it'd be an increased ground rent essentially, bumping out for that consideration.
My follow-up question to that is, have the tenants been involved in any of this, or any of their representatives been involved in this plan in preparing?
Yeah, so the tenants
proposal?
have, just as recently as this Friday, engaged with Brian, the airport manager, and Dana, counsel for the city, and they've put together their own proposal for a leasing policy that we're now kind of working to integrate and kind of work out the difference between there. I think the terms are very similar. We're very close on that. It's just a matter of getting the details on what that will look like and how we can integrate their feedback into the policy that we've drafted. So essentially, they're those two drafts that we're kind of working together right now.
Can I ask another question?
Please.
So you talked about that first bullet point, the investment for term.
Yeah.
We talked last week about that people weren't going to be able to do substantial improvements without the city's understanding and approval, right?
Yep.
I assume that would be door upgrades and roofs and wiring, whatever, whatever's inside. So how will the city decide? Okay, so I'm on my 35th year of my 20, 10, and 10, but my roof's leaking bad. What am I going to do with the city if I'm the hangar owner? How's that all going to work?
Yeah, so I think there's two different parts of that. So the first part is, say you're 35 years into a 40-year lease, you get a leaky roof that needs to be replaced, right?
Mhm.
So the design and development standards at the very bottom of this would cover the process, similar to dealing with the planning department to get permission to go and make that improvement and do that construction. In terms of getting credit for that toward extension, essentially when you end the lease, now the condition of the hangar is going to be improved, and therefore when that facility condition index assessment is done, the hangar is in a better condition where you're going to get essentially more credit towards getting a lease extension. So the idea is that when you have a kind of a minimum level of condition that you need for a hangar extension. So if the tenants maintain the hangar well for over the 40-year period, it should be in a condition where they don't necessarily need to put any more money into it. And it's going to have a useful life that will at least last that term extension that they're getting from the airport.
I don't think I understood.
So on the second part.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is that rather than at the end of the term looking to have them put in X number of dollars in order to get X number of years or Y number of years back on that. That instead of looking at an X number of dollar for Y years, we're going to look at what's the condition of the hangar itself in, not how much money you put in now or what you're planning to put in. If it's in good condition, you're going to get Y number of years.
Okay. So what does that do to my, what happens when my 40 years hits?
Yeah, so when the 40 years ends, that's where the two proposals that we're looking at, either the city comes and does an inspection. If the hangar passes the inspection, then you qualify for that extension. So you get the extension. The other proposal that we've written into the policy is that the tenant would essentially have a third party do an assessment of the hangar, noting any of the deficiencies of, whatever those conditions are that could require additional investment. And then based on that, making those investments in order to get more term on the lease.
Okay. Okay.
Did that answer the question?
Well,
But what if they don't do it, I guess? is
yeah,
the question.
okay. There's just a lot of what ifs that
Yeah.
go along with this thing, and which is I'm sure I know why you guys want to handle it on the administration side. I get that.
Yep.
I just think there's got to be some kind of a consistency in the policy so that it doesn't become arbitrary. It doesn't become something else. And that's what I see with some of these things that tend to be a little on the nebulous side to me. If let's say I was at 37 years, well, I got to fix that roof, but are you gonna, as the city gonna say, well, okay, well, I guess we'll give you another 10 if you do that roof? Is that the kind of thing that's gonna happen, or what's gonna happen?
No, so there's really two proposals, right? So one would be for the city, basically, as long as the hangar passes the inspection, tenants get an automatic extension, right? So as long as the conditions meeting that minimum condition, you're gonna be able to get an extension. So that's probably the most direct way. The other option is to basically set a minimum of what index level would the hangar need to be in order to be able to get, Y number of years for that. Brian, I saw you sit at the table. Did you want to comment on that?
Just gonna give a quick 5-minute overview of the two policies, because there's a lot of questions that we've spent hundreds of hours working and you guys get a half an hour. So the major things that we've agreed on is that there's no more back deals on leasing airport land. We're gonna make it open and fair like the FAA requires us to do. If somebody's interested, we're gonna let everybody know, so that there's no more, oh, I didn't know that land was available. I was interested in it. The next is the 40-year lease, a 20 plus 2 10s. The FAA says 39 years to recover your investment. So from the airport's perspective, it's a depreciating asset that goes to a zero value for the tenant at the end of the 40 years. But the master plan, which I talked to Councilman Heyer, the city council approved the 3 pillars, which was promoting local pilots in the area. If you only give them 40 years and take the hangar, none of the local pilots can afford that. They're not going to build. So my recommendation was 20 years after that, conditional on the city council doesn't have a master plan that says we need to redevelop that. So at 40 years, the tenant is guaranteed that land, unless the council decides 20 years in that they need it, then they would have to buy out that contract. That gives the tenant confidence, at least for 40 years. So before the master plan is supposed to be done every 10 years. So with 40 years left, the tenant will see they have confidence. Hey, there's no RDA. My hangar's in good condition. I'm still compliant. I want to get a new lease for a 10 plus 10 plus 10. So that the council or the city will only be at risk for 10 years after that first 40, because if they decide, oh, this is a redevelopment district, then we don't have to renew the lease. And the tenants have agreed to that. Up to 70 years. After 70 years, there's no guarantee at all. We will give a 5-year lease or less, I believe is our proposal, which is currently what the RDA says. You'll have a 5-year lease or less. The other important change is that during the first 20 years of new construction, there's no fair market value, that's not the term, but fair value assigned to, that can change for the lease that's signed. Now, the council can change that every year if they want, but it wouldn't be effective for that first 20 years. It's different than the escalation clause. The escalation, the 3% or CPI is going to happen every year. So if the last one, the next master plan starts in 28. So if we decide in 30, hey, this rate is 60 cents, it should be $1.20. The council can readjust that rate to $1.20. And everyone else that's already in will be in at that rate. After the 40 years, the longest anyone would ever lease property without being affected to that new lease rate is 10 years. After 70, it's going to be every 5. If the 3% doesn't keep up with the market, which with the demand on that west side, it probably won't. The earlier you get in at the airport, the better. The longer you can secure that. The other change is that in the first 40 years, we give the person that's invested or the commercial operator the right to either assign the lease or they can enter a new lease for 30 years. So if they assign the lease, they get the same rates, terms, everything of that lease, but they only get what's remaining in that lease. If they decide they would rather get a new lease, then they have to come in at the new lease rate. And then they would get 20 plus 210 up to the 40. So those are some of the improvements that we've put in there.
Is there gonna be any distinction between if it's in an RDA area or
Oh, yeah.
if there's just been a master plan? Is there a difference? Or does the RDA become because of the master plan? Is that what?
Yeah,
what
the
you're
master
thinking?
plan is an 18-month process where we talk with city council, here's where your airport is. And then the council gives administration or the airport director the direction they want to go. And this is where I was talking about that annual report.
Right, right.
Hey, here's the master plan. Here's what city council wants. Promote local pilots, promote commercial air service, promote economic development. How is the airport director accomplishing your goal? So this will do one of those. It will promote the local pilots and protect them at the airport. So that extra 30 years that's an option, they're compliant and we don't need it. That's the value added that will promote investment in the Ogden Airport. That potential for an extra 30 years. If the airport doesn't need it, we can charge the rate that's fair and it produces confidence that, hey, I can realistically have this hangar for 60 or 70 years before the city determines that it's not compatible. Of course, it has to meet the building codes. It has to, and everyone's fine with that.
One other thing, and I know we're out of time, but I think the important issue is that the non-flying public not be supporting the flying public in as much as, I think you told me that 60% of the airport users really weren't Ogden citizens. They were surrounding, and we certainly do want to support them still because that's what keeps the airport vital. But we don't want our taxpayers having to take up and fill in a gap. Let's put it that way.
I promise they won't.
Yeah.
That's the one pillar. The other is commercial air service. We're going to bring that up in rates, fees, and charges. We promote commercial air service. That's going to give us $1.3 million a year. So when we invested $200,000 to get Breeze here, we've more than recouped that 100%. The economic growth is going to come from the west side, from the large aircraft. So this lease policy will set the standard and development guide for that west side. So we're on the right track to get financially to move in that direction. I'm not going to guarantee it, but we're going to move in that direction.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like you're still negotiating a few things, or at least it sounded like I wrote down details of the policy. Is that what I heard you say?
That's right. We're
Yeah.
working out the last details of the policy.
So it sounds like we maybe have one more opportunity to hear this. All right.
So if I could just jump in, do you as a council want to hear this again? So it sounds like there's still some details to work out on the administrative policy. the action for the council is pretty straightforward in that you're just removing quite a bit of this from Title 8, which is the legislative code. Some of this is being moved to Title 4, which is a consolidated fee schedule, is still in the legislative code. But your action is fairly simple because you're not approving the administrative code that they're still working out. So are you as a council okay doing your part now, understanding that there still would be a little bit of work left on the other side on the piece that you are not actually
After
approving?
today, I feel a lot more comfortable approving.
Yeah, I feel comfortable moving forward that way too.
Dana Farmer with the Ogden City Attorney's Office. The,
Really are.
okay,
2 seconds.
the big rocks are in the jar. It's just the sand. So we can be ready for council action as far as the things that we need to discuss through with the two groups.
All right, thanks.
Okay, are you okay for next week if we can get all the ordinances in place? You okay for next week?
We'll have to talk about that.
Okay.
Or not. I waved to him. I'm not sure he recognized me, even though he had the owl. In the yellow.
Hey, good evening and welcome to the 6 p.m. City Council meeting of December 9th, 2025. Please note that all council members are present. With that, I'll turn the time over to Vice Chair Heyer to Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Chair White. If you would please stand if you're able and join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We could take a quick moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Are there any acknowledgements? Councilmember Chaburka, I'm always looking to you. Any acknowledgements? No. All right. Vice Chair Heyer, would you like?
Chair, yes, if I might make a quick motion to reorder our agenda to take item 8 and move it up to right after item 3.
Second. We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to move the order of the agenda around. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. All right, then we'll turn the time over to Councilmember Myers.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's my privilege today to recognize Judy and Leon Jones and many friends who are here with them. And I just want to extend a warm welcome to all of you as tonight we recognize them for their significant contribution to our city. I have a proclamation that I'd like to read. Ogden City Council and Mayor proudly recognize Judith and Leon Jones for their invaluable contributions to Ogden City. Judy and Leon have been devoted supporters of Union Station building and museums for many years. Family contributed one of the most important gun collections in the United States, a car to the Browning-Kimball Car Museum, and other museum pieces. They have made significant contributions to the arts, including a major support for what is now Onstage Ogden, Ogden School Foundation, and the Eccles Art Center. Judy has shared her extraordinary artistic talent with the community. Judy and Leon have consistently advanced education through their enduring support of public school reading programs, the donation of books and supplies, and help provide opportunities for countless students to thrive. Their families played a vital role in the creation of the Browning Arts Center at Weber State University, established the Browning Presents program, and has made contributions to many Weber State programs. Judy and Leon have demonstrated their commitment to the vitality of Ogden as business owners on historic 25th Street and as active participants in city policy, always working toward the betterment of our community. Judy
Judy and Leon embody the spirit of community through their dedication as gardeners, artists, philanthropists, and visionaries whose work has uplifted the quality of life in Ogden and beyond. As Louis Breeze said at a symphony board meeting years ago, Judy and Leon are unpretentious heart and soul of this community. My privilege to present this today, 9th day of December, 1925, signed by our 2025, thank you. I'm in the wrong decade. That would have been a little early for even Leon, I think. This is signed by our chair, Marcia White, and also by our mayor, Benjamin Nadolski. So it's my privilege to present this recognition to both of you, Leon and Judy. We just invite you to come forward to receive this. Ask everyone to make comment first. Our privilege. We all want to shake your hand. And Judy, we recognize you there, even though you're a little more modest in your being here. But we'll let Leon, we'll let the light shine on him today. But this recognition is for you both.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you, Dad?
Oh, well,
Fine.
congratulations.
Glad to meet you.
Thank you so much for
Angela?
everything you've done.
Yeah.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mara. I'm gonna shake your hand too. Oh, fine.
And your family, and your family.
That's great. Do you want anybody else?
Family, you want to come up?
Judy.
Up, family.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Look at my two shoulders, so that's all you're gonna get.
I love it, I love it.
Look in here, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Whoa.
Okay, Tom, here we go.
I don't want to, Paris or I'll go over and sit next to you.
Oh, yeah, that's a great
Wait just a moment.
If I read her lips correctly, she said, "I'll kill you."
Yeah. Am I right? I think you were right. I think I got that. Would you like to say something?
I would,
I think,
very quick.
I think you get to stand right here, Dad.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
I thank you very much for this. And needless to say, there's a lot of other people involved, and I'm not going to run through any of that today. And my main contribution has been through my work with the Ogden Union Station Museums. And I got involved with them like about 50 years ago when I first moved to Ogden, a little before that, and have been pretty well involved with them ever since. I got tackled into it by Tom Moore here, who said, why don't you join the Ogden Union Station Development Corporation? Now, some of you may have never heard of that, but they were the organization that essentially refurbished the building, rebuilt it, built and designed the museums, and filled them with artifacts. And that was pretty well done even before I got there. Anyway, Tom asked me to be on the board, which I accepted because the Union Station happened to match my interests almost exactly. I loved all the museums and was happy to be involved with them. And eventually I got to be president of the Development Corporation shortly before the mayor announced that the Development Corporation didn't exist anymore. And then there was no such thing. And so I scrambled to change things around and decided we'd like to have some agency that was independent of the city to guide the museums themselves, which we were heavily involved in. And so we resuscitated the Ogden Union Station Foundation. It had already existed, but it was fairly moribund. And I'm not going to go over the next 40 years, but over the 40 years, we had a lot of ideas and suggestions and ways to make a new museum that could handle all of the artifacts and particularly display all of the nice railroad things that we had. And I think the recognition is that it really should sort of be a Museum of Ogden and covering most of the things that happened here, but the railroad amongst the most important. And we came up with all sorts of things to do, new buildings, new expansions into the laundry building, out along the campus, whatever else. But now, the mayor, the administration, and a new council have an exciting chance at this land now that we never had before. That is, we've realized, and I think you've all realized, that the Union Station building itself is a great monument to the city, but it's old, falling down, and needs help. And you also have another wondrous advantage that you've got about a 4-block long strip of land on either side of the Union Station building itself that is just primed to do something with. I think with your agreements with the UTA and one thing and another, that's about ready to come about. Now, I want to say a few things about that. I think the first go around at that was done by the developer was in the interest of the developer and not the interest of the cities and the citizens of Ogden. So I'm sort of glad, I hope that's been set aside. The other thing I want to say is, and I've been harping on this, by the way, and we have been for 30 some odd years, and that is that you need to make this development down there and the museums and things part of Ogden City. And that is part of the downtown. You cannot build a vibrant development over there that doesn't include downtown. It doesn't include the Wonder Block. And unfortunately, the only way to do this is to get rid of Wall Avenue. And now I would like you all to try to envision the downtown Ogden with Wall Avenue being turned into a plaza with trees, grass, benches, walking paths, sports availability, and things so that people can get back and forth between the development at the Union Station and, for instance, now the Wonder Block. So then what would I like to see? I'd like to see a development in that area that is built around new museums and is based on the architecture of 25th Street and not the Wonder Block, and that it all can come about quickly. We would like to think, as I think the mayor now has agreed with the Union Station Foundation, that we can be a little better partners than we have been in the last little while, and that we would like to work together with you and all the new people to get the new museums up and running by hiring a museum expert that knows what they're doing. They know how to design a museum. They know how to set up the museums themselves to go out and get funding for people and get this thing rolling again and get back to the developers and the designers to fit the new museums that meet the qualities needed in with the rest of the development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leon.
I just want to say one thing to point out who this man is. When the city decided it didn't have the money to run and pay the bills at Union Station, the city decided it wasn't going to pay the water bill, it wasn't going to pay the light bill, it wasn't going to pay the running of the building. This man wrote the checks for years, paying for the running of Union Station. This is not a man just philosophically talking. This is a man who's pulled out his money, written the checks, and that's the reason we still have a building that's standing. He deserves a great hand of applause.
All right, thank you very much.
May I make a quick
Yes,
comment?
please.
And I just, I love the Jones family so much. I just have to say that I can't even believe I'm saying this, but I've been here about 21 years now. And the very first week I moved here after my husband got a job at Weber State in the art department, which I know you also have a huge hand in helping to support the arts in our community. My husband kind of pushed me out the door and said, go to that knitting group down at the Needlepoint Joint, because I did that where we lived prior. And I was, of course, very nervous and like, oh, I don't really want to go, to this new space. It made me really nervous. But that was the first place I found a home with Amelia and the knitting group on Thursday nights at the Needlepoint Joint. I met all of my friends that then helped support me even later to become a council member and really made us feel welcome in the community. So it's kind of a full circle for me to celebrate you all, because you've been such great partners, not only in the city and Union Station and all these other ways, but just being a very welcoming, comforting place to hold that on 25th Street so that people feel welcome. So thank you, and well deserved.
Looking at you, Mary, you usually have like comments. Yeah? Any other comments?
It's your turn.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair White. I want to thank you, Leon, for your remarks and also for your guys' contributions over the years. And I want to assure you that one of the promises I made in the campaign was that we were going to prioritize history, prioritize preservation before we prioritize development. And I want to assure you that I've kept that promise. And that not only have I kept that promise, that we have kept that promise. And we are at a point where we have done so much engagement and gotten so much good feedback from the community. The most fulfilling part is that the vision that I have and the vision that I see in others and other leaders and decision makers is very consistent and aligned with the vision that we get from the community. And that is heartening for me, because it means that we all see the same thing. We see the value in the same thing. And where we don't see the value, we are made aware of it, and we respect each other, and we make sure that it's valued. And so I'm really excited about the plan that we have, and I'm really excited about the meeting that we had with the Union Station Foundation last week, because we were able to basically share that message and say, I think we're at a point where we have agreed that we agree. And it's time now that this is not something that we fight over anymore. This is something that we fight for. And that, because that is what it's going to take. It's going to take the entire community and the entire city and every leader in this city fighting for this station and fighting for its future, based mostly on its past. That's the future is in our past, and our past is our future. So I'm really excited to have the foundation and to be convening the tables that we are now, and for us to all start to partner in a way that we can start to execute and implement on the things that we all know matter. And I just want you to know, none of that would have happened without you. None of that would have happened without everybody in this room and countless others outside the room. But you guys, that is where we find ourselves. That is something that most cities don't have, that we get to celebrate and carry our past forward into our future. So thank you for allowing that opportunity to happen.
Thank you very much. We're very encouraged. You're on the right path.
All right, thank you. All right, well, next on our agenda is number 8. Now is number 4. Is the appointment of the council executive director and Janine Eller-Smith.
This is a good time to leave.
I will thank you again.
I'll be back to give the new group.
Janine.
I knew they wanted to leave, that's why I said that, so. Yes, it's an honor to stand before you tonight, council members. You know, about a few months ago, 5 or 6 months ago, I announced to you that I was going to be retiring in January and was then directed to start a search for a new executive director with the goal of having someone in place by the end of the year. Because we're having new council members come on, wanted to make sure that a new executive director for the city council was in place to start building those relationships and making some changes that would fit, you know, a new change. So just a little bit about the process. You all were kind enough to give me some names from the community. We picked 6 names from the community who participated in a selection committee, and they were all great. We had Bob Hunter, Julie Johnson from United Way, Bill Ross, who was a planning commissioner, A.B. Maybe, who used to work in our office, Caitlin Gottner, who's a former council member, Doris Getty Stevenson, who's a professor at Weber State and a good friend of ours through the Hope Connection. And then I also was on that committee. We put the job description out and received 49 applications. It was announced nationwide, and we did get several from other states applying for the position. So after that, we worked with the selection committee, who were very responsive, and we narrowed it down to 6 finalists, and the selection committee interviewed each of those 6 finalists and then narrowed that list down to 3 for your consideration and interviews. And as a result of those interviews, you've selected Glenn Symes, who is the current deputy executive director, to serve as the next executive director. And so before you is just a resolution to make that appointment of Glenn Symes to the council executive director position effective January 3rd, 2026.
All right. Any questions for Janine Eller-Smith before she?
It's too late. She's
She's
gone. Chair, I don't. Public probably is not aware of the process because it wasn't a very public process. Our executive director is a council-facing job. It isn't a public-facing. But we've all been pretty intently involved in this. And Glenn has been with the city for, I think, 15 years. And he's been the deputy for a number of years and worked in the council office the whole time I've been on the council. So he certainly has some credentials to accolades to his position. And if you're fine, I would just love to make this motion.
All right. Is that a motion?
No, I will make a motion that we adopt Joint Resolution 2025-7. Wrong, sorry, wrong page. There we go. 2025-24, appointing our new council executive director, Mr. Glenn Symes.
Second.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Ritchie by a second. That was a play on words, if you get that. Yeah. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Traburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Graff.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. Congratulations. Well, welcome, welcome and come on up, or come on up and welcome.
Thanks. I know we've got a long agenda tonight, so I've just got just a couple of remarks I just want to share. I didn't know if we wanted to do pictures and all that stuff first, so that's why I was kind of hanging back a little bit. But I'll go ahead and do this, and then we can proceed. Well, first, of course, I want to thank you for the opportunity to continue to serve the council and to be part of this truly amazing city. Second, of course, I want to thank Janine for everything that she's done for me to help me get to this point. I also want to thank Brandon and Eric and Steve, Mavis and Darcy from our council office. I'm definitely not going to be able to do this job without them. Since the change in the form of government in 1992, which I've talked to Mr. Hunter about, he was around at the time, there have only been 3 council executive directors, and I've had the privilege of working for 2 of them. And each director brought their own unique leadership style and approach to the work, but they were all dedicated to the success of the council and of Ogden. I'm committed to serving you with that same dedication. Having only 3 directors over the course of more than 3 decades is only possible if those directors work for dedicated public servants who work hard every day to represent their neighbors and to make the best decisions they can for Ogden. The outgoing council members, this is bittersweet time, of course. There will be some new faces on the dais in January, and I will no longer be able to see you Tuesday evenings and all the other times that we get to see each other. In our time together, we have become more than just colleagues. We've become friends, and I'll miss you. The council members continuing on, I look forward to working with you in this new capacity. Your friendship will be absolutely invaluable to me as we continue our work together. For the new council members, I'm excited to get to know you, to hear your ideas, and to see your passion for Ogden. I'm committed to helping you achieve your goals as members of the Ogden City Council. To the mayor, Mara, and administrative staff, you have my commitment to building and maintaining the relationships that are absolutely necessary between the council and the administration to make Ogden prosper. Thank you again for this opportunity. I'm humbled by your faith and your trust in me, and I'm committed to working as hard as I can to help this council and this city be successful. Thank you.
Yes, come for a photo.
Yeah, bring the fam up.
Yep.
The fan.
Congratulations, Glenn. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Glenn.
You guys come over this way a little bit. Over here.
Oh. You went way over.
All right.
All right.
Janine, I think you wanted to.
Yeah, I don't think I've shared this story with you very much. I have shared it with Glenn. But I take full credit for him being a member of the council staff. We had a planner leave, Alan Frankie, and we were trying to replace him, and we'd actually gone through several interviews and just couldn't find the right person. And finally, I asked Bill, or my predecessor, I said, can I look at the resumes? And he said, sure. And so he gave me this stack of resumes. It was about this thick. And I went through them, and for whatever reason, I don't know if you, I took Glenn's resume into his office. I said, this is the guy. This is who we need to talk to. And so we brought him in and interviewed him. And I think the selling point for Bill was that Glenn was able to identify Haystack Rock. Do you remember that? Which was, Bill had a picture of it in his office. So that sold him on hiring him. And it's been such a wonderful experience to work with Glenn. He's so thoughtful, and I've just appreciated every minute. So right now, I would just like to do a sort of unofficial handing off of the calendar. You know that we all live and die by that calendar, and actually I already had one change tonight. So anyway, it's good to have you there.
Thank
you.
So you didn't get to work with Pat, huh, Pomerell?
No, I know of Pat. I know she was a planner, so that's a special place for me. So we've gone from planner to finance person to attorney to back to planner. So
yeah,
we've gone full circle with the back. But yeah, I do know of her, but I haven't met her yet.
Welcome to your new position.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know. There should be more than just the handoff of the calendar. Gosh.
That's kind of whack little ceremony.
I know.
You may have it now.
But okay. All right. Well, are you going to change chairs in
January?
Yeah, so it's effective January 3rd.
All right.
So technically, you still got me.
All right. Well,
So,
we'll hang with you for a while.
Happy for that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think it would be appropriate for Glenn to introduce his family, because they're here, his
Yeah,
children.
that's
and
a great
wife.
idea. Thanks.
And then for him to leave and take him to dinner.
Yeah, right. Thanks.
Unfortunately, since council meetings are essentially game day for us, I really can't go anywhere. So we'll have to do this another day with them. So I appreciate the opportunity to introduce my family, because of course, most Tuesday nights, they don't see me, and they haven't for a very long time. So my wife, Shelley, we've been together for a long time. She's always been very supportive of me in this, and they find a lot of fun things to do on Tuesday nights when I'm not around. And so the days when we don't have a meeting on Tuesday night, I'm sort of this fifth wheel that is just, I don't know what to do with myself. They don't know what to do with me. So, and then my oldest son, Carson, he works for the city. He's had a fantastic experience. He's really embedded himself in Ogden, both with the Raptors, as you know. He was head bat boy for a long time, has worked for the Raptors for a long time. He hosted baseball players because of that, Raptors players, and he's a student at Weaver State. So he's as much Ogden as I think anybody. And then my middle son, Quinn, here, and my youngest son, Lachlan. And we're just so happy to have everybody and to be a family. So again, I really appreciate the support, and I definitely couldn't do it without them. Thank you.
Thanks, family.
Thank you, family.
Really fast. Like, I'm gonna cry, but thank you, Janine, for taking a chance on him. We were like 15 years ago, we were scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, he was unhappy, I was unhappy. We were living off of getting paid once a month with 2 paychecks, being a school teacher and working for Farmington, and it just like fell out of nowhere, and it was such a blessing. So I appreciate it. And I hear all of the stories and all the great things that the city council does. And my grandma, my mom, grew up in Ogden, and there's a connection with Bart's family. But she was the payroll accountant at Wonder Bakery for years, for over 40 years. And so it's come full circle. She's no longer with us, but Ogden's a great place, and my mom's an Ogden Tiger, and it's just a great place. And I appreciate all of you guys taking a chance on this one. So thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Shelley.
thanks. Well, I don't know if we should go on, because we're gonna have so much fun with the fiscal year 2025-26 budget amendment.
Bye.
Justin,
Hey, tough that, Justin.
yeah, go for it.
We'll
Do
set
it.
a clap for you at the end.
I don't think,
Breaking all the protocols.
Want a picture too? I mean,
if you're taking them, I will decline. No, I appreciate the opportunity to come and present a budget opening for you, before you tonight, Chair and council members. That is a tough act to follow, and I'm very excited to continue to work with Glenn and in this new capacity. And Janine, it's been great also working with you too. So and from the finance perspective, I think we have a great relationship with the council office, and I really appreciate working with them. So I just wanted to let you know that. The proposal before you tonight is to adopt an ordinance which amends the Ogden City budget by increasing it by just over $2.2 million. And when we met in work session and discussed this a few weeks ago, there was some proposal made by council that we've gone ahead and we included that adjustment in this. And so I'll go through what the line item changes are in the budget opening, but just to make sure, so citizens are aware of this, this budget opening doesn't have any impact to citizens at all. A lot of this is cleaning up some of our old CIP projects that we still had some remaining balances on, as well as recognizing some grant funds that the city is receiving for the airport. And so to begin with, I'll going through the capital improvement projects fund. The adjustments in that fund, what we're proposing is we have a couple of old trails projects that are from the early 2000s that have had a balance there for a very long time. And in working with public services, we would like to close those out and move them to projects that we are using, that we have current work going on. So we'd be reducing, one of them had a balance of 105,000 and the other one 88,000. And the proposal would be to take 93,000 of that and add it to our Centennial Trail CIP. Now, when we met in work session a few weeks ago, there was a question on, is that specific to just a certain area, or is that all trails in the city? And I just wanted to, we've made some changes over the years to that project brief to be a more citywide trail project. And just to let you know, as we go through the fiscal year 27 budget process, we're going to change the name of that project to better reflect what that is, instead of it just being called Centennial Trails. But we also would like to propose, and funding $100,000 for trails improvements. And what this is meant to do as part of the budget this year, we had put $30,000 aside for I was going to say TFNU, but I figured I better say this is the Trail Foundation of Northern Utah. And a request from council was to add some additional funds for them, as they've been able to go out and use some of the funds the city had appropriated to get some grants. And so with that request, we've adjusted this budget opening to put $100,000 aside that would allow for additional funding for the TFNU and also the Ogden Trails Network to be able to continue that collaboration with those groups. So that is included in this budget appropriation. The other items in there is we are doing some work at the Lauren Farr Pool to try to extend the life a little bit of the pool. We have a project that we've already had some funding in for the Lauren Farr swimming pool, but the fixes that we're doing right now is more than what is appropriated. And so we do have a contingency in our CIP fund that this is a great example of why we budget that. And so we're proposing to use that contingency fund and move it so that we can use it at the Lauren Farr Pool. The hope is that these improvements to putting this liner in the pool will extend the life by hopefully 10 years. So add a little more life to that city asset. And then the last one in the CIP fund is we had an old project for the Ogden River Adventure Park Playground. We want to move those remaining funds into our general park facilities CIP. When we went through the budgeting process this year, we didn't appropriate any funds, and there's not, we do have carryover funds in our park facilities, but this will be something that will assist as they continue to have different things need to do with playgrounds or any other improvements to various parks throughout the city. So the net change in the CIP fund is zero, as all these are just moving funding between projects. In the airport fund, the items that are proposed there, first of all, we have 3 different projects that we're proposing to recognize grant funds related to. One of them is a South Apron project. We've already appropriated some grant funds. These are additional grant funds that were awarded to us. We've already got the match appropriated, so this is just recognizing the grant funds. And then same with the cargo apron. This is recognizing our entitlement funds to be able to assist with that project. And then also additional funds for the baggage carousel that we received in grant funds. Again, we have the match already in place for those 3. This is just appropriating the additional grants that were awarded. The last portion of the airport budget opening is we have 3 different projects, one related to the terminal restrooms in the basement there. And then we also had one for the terminal seating and one for some xeriscaping around the airport. In going through the process for the restrooms, we've already appropriated some funds there, but they weren't sufficient for what is needed to be able to make some improvements. As many of you probably seen what those restrooms look like. So we needed an additional $204,000. And so what the airport and administration is proposing is that we take the funding from 2 other projects and increase the funding in this project to be able to complete this project. Part of this is made due because on the terminal seating, we had originally appropriated, I want to say, close to $110,000. But we had an opportunity to purchase some of the used seating from the Salt Lake City airport at a significantly lesser price, and we were able to do a refurbishment to them, and they actually are better shape than the ones that we had at the terminal. And so we don't need the rest of that funding for those terminal seating, so we want to move that money. And then in the xeriscape project, the plan right now is to scale back a little bit on that project, and so they could use $100,000 from that to help with the restrooms. So the net change in the airport is an increase of just over $2.2 million. And then the last thing in the golf fund, each year the city receives municipal ramp funds from the county that can go towards various projects for parks and recreation. And for a couple of years, we'd used those funds to assist with the deck that was built at El Monte and also to do some kitchen improvements at El Monte. The deck project is finished, and we had $21,000 left in that. And so we're proposing to move those funds to the kitchen portion of that's needed there to be able to do some renovations to the clubhouse kitchen at El Monte. The bids came back of what we're needing to do, and there was a delta of about $6,000. So because of how the airport's been able to operate the last couple of years, we're proposing to use some of their retained earnings to help cover that delta of $6,000. So the net change in the golf course is an increase of $6,000. So again, the total increase is just over $2.2 million. Are there any questions?
Any questions? All right,
And I
I think we're good
appreciate you
here. Yeah.
considering.
Chair, without any questions?
it's
Oh, go
Public
ahead.
hearing.
Oh, public hearing, sorry.
So it's a public hearing. If there's anybody that wants to talk about any of the budget amendments, it's your time to shine. Anybody online, just hold on a second.
Whoop, wow.
All right, does
All
it
right,
look?
Chair, I'd make a motion, we close the public hearing on this item.
We have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, second by Councilmember Myers to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
And what I'd like to do is propose that we adopt ordinance 2025-38, amending the fiscal year 25-26 budget. Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Graff, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt the proposed ordinance 2025-38 as a roll call vote.
Councilmember Chaburka,
Aye.
Councilmember Graff,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie,
Aye.
Councilmember Blair,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hire,
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. All right.
Chair, I'd like to acknowledge the administration and thank them for their ear and their action in rearranging CIP funds for trails and parks. Since coming onto the council, that's been one of my passions, and I really appreciate the ongoing funding for our trails and parks and the health and ability of our citizens to get outdoors and breathe breathe the air and get some exercise.
All right, thank you.
Second that.
All right, next on our agenda is the 2025 Water Conservation Plan. Brady Hurd. Oh, yeah, I did too. Oh, and Matt.
All right, good evening, council. Appreciate you giving us this opportunity to talk to you about the conservation plan. I'm Brady Hurd, the Water Utility Director for Ogden City, and with me I have Matt Hack, who's our water conservationist tonight. So with this, before you, we have for review and consideration for adoption is a joint resolution for water conservation or updated water conservation plan. Back in the mid to late 90s, the state actually enacted a code which required water purveyors such as ourselves to put together conservation plans. And since that point in time, every 5 years, we go through this process and update that plan. So this is the updated plan as we speak. With that, this plan very closely is aligned with the regional plan from the state, in that they have a goal to reach by 2065 gallons per capita of 175. Currently, as it stands as a city, we are tracking about mid 180s, 184, 186, in that area is where we're at currently for gallons per capita. With this joint resolution, it has to be approved by December 31st of this year, and so that's why we're here for you. To kind of